Three young women suddenly appeared at the wedding of a billionaire. Just minutes later, a secret was revealed that left the entire hall in stunned silence. The music stopped. The sound of laughter and chatter faded away. Every eye turned toward the three identical figures in striking blue dresses. No one knew who they were. No one understood why they dared to walk into this place. This was not just any wedding. It was the wedding of the century, where tech billionaire Harold Spencer stood proudly beside his new wife, Victoria Caldwell. The press called it the perfect union of power and beauty. Guests whispered that it was the social event of the year, but amid the crystal glasses and the dazzling smiles, the arrival of these three women was like a crack in flawless glass. The hall fell into silence. Eyes followed them with equal parts curiosity and suspicion. Were they here to offer a blessing, or to uncover a wound long hidden? Stay with this story, because the secret they carried would not only shatter a wedding, it would strike at the heart of sacrifices, silences, and the long wait for justice that so many women have endured. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, scattering light like falling stars across the grand ballroom. Every table glittered with silver cutlery, tall crystal vases, and roses flown in from overseas. Ice sculptures melted slowly, their shapes catching the glow of the lights. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved silently, carrying trays of champagne that shimmered gold. At the center of it all stood Harold Spencer, a man who had built an empire from nothing. His salt and pepper hair caught the light, his smile firm, his posture unshaken. He looked every bit the man the world admired, brilliant, untouchable, and proud. Beside him, Victoria Caldwell radiated grace in a flowing Vera Wang gown. The ivory silk cascaded like a waterfall, each step catching whispers of awe from the crowd. Her hand clung tightly to Harold's arm, her diamonds flashing with every turn of her wrist. Around them gathered politicians, celebrities, and business moguls. Their laughter filled the air, confident and effortless, as though nothing could disturb this celebration. The wedding was more than love. It was a declaration of status, a stage for wealth and reputation. No one could have imagined that beyond these glittering walls, something darker was waiting to break in. Across the street, three young women stood frozen, their figures hidden by the shadows of passing cars. They wore emerald dresses, identical in cut and color, yet their faces told three different stories. Mia's hands clutched the small purse at her side, where a forged invitation rested like a secret too heavy to carry. Her heart hammered, but her gaze remained locked on the estate gates. Beside her, Lily shifted nervously, her voice trembling. "Mia, what if this is a mistake? What if we ruin everything?" She tried to steady her breath, but fear pressed down harder with each passing second. Emma arrived last, stepping out of a cab with hesitation in every move. She smoothed her dress, her expression tight. "This is insane. Security will throw us out before we take one step." Her words hung heavy, but even in protest she didn't turn away. The three of them shared a silence then. In that pause, their mother's face rose in memory. Pale, fragile, her voice soft but firm. "Find him. Tell him the truth. Don't let my life end without it." The memory cut deep, like a wound that would never heal. It was her dying wish that brought them here tonight. The gates stood tall, a wall between the glittering world inside and the storm in their hearts. Lily's hand trembled as she touched her sister's arm. "Please, maybe we should wait. Another day, another place." Her eyes begged for retreat, for safety. Emma crossed her arms tightly. "She's right. This is madness. Do you even hear yourself? Barging into a billionaire's wedding? Hundreds of guests, cameras everywhere. If this goes wrong, it destroys us." But Mia's eyes never wavered. Her voice cut through their fear with quiet steel. "If not today, then never. He's surrounded by walls, by people who shield him. After tonight, he will vanish into a life we can't reach. This is our only chance." The weight of her words pressed down on them. The doubt, the danger, all of it was real. But so was their mother's plea. Emma exhaled sharply, frustration etched into every line of her face. "Fine. But if this goes wrong, I'll never forgive you." Her voice cracked, betraying the fear beneath her anger. The sisters exchanged one last look. Their lives would change forever after tonight. Together, they stepped toward the gates, each footfall heavy with the risk of truth. The line of guests moved slowly toward the grand entrance. Cameras flashed, voices rose in laughter, and the security staff scanned every invitation with quick, practiced glances. The sisters stood side by side, their forged cards in hand, their breaths shallow. Mia went first. Her pulse roared in her ears as she extended the invitation to the guard. For one eternal second, he frowned, his eyes sliding over the paper. Then, distracted by the arrival of a well-known actor behind them, he waved her through without a second glance. Lily followed, nearly stumbling as her knees weakened beneath her. The guard barely noticed, too busy checking the crowd pressing forward. She slipped past, her relief hidden behind a forced smile. Emma was last. She hesitated, every nerve screaming to turn back, but then she lifted her chin, held out her card, and walked forward. The guard barely blinked before gesturing her inside, and just like that, the impossible became real. The three sisters were inside the walls of wealth and splendor. None of the guests knew the storm that had just entered. Behind the crystal and the music, three hearts carried a truth powerful enough to shatter everything. The ballroom glowed like a palace of glass. Crystal chandeliers poured rivers of light over polished marble floors. Every corner gleamed. Every detail screamed of wealth. Laughter and applause rippled from the tables, where guests raised their glasses, lost in luxury. Yet, in the middle of that glow, stood the three sisters. Their emerald dresses blended with the crowd, but their hearts beat out of rhythm. Each sparkle of the chandeliers reminded them how far they stood from this world. Each burst of laughter was a reminder of what they had never known: privilege, protection, and belonging. Mia's hand brushed the folded paper hidden in her clutch. Her chest tightened. Lily's eyes darted nervously from face to face, terrified someone would notice them. Emma kept her chin high, but the stiffness in her shoulders betrayed the storm inside. The contrast was unbearable. Around them, opulence, pride, and celebration. Within them, fear, grief, and a truth too heavy to carry. They did not belong here, not among the wealthy and the powerful. Yet tonight they had crossed into this glittering hall for a reason. And soon, the truth in their hearts would collide with the empire built on Harold Spencer's name. The music softened as Harold Spencer moved through the crowd. His commanding presence drew eyes wherever he walked. Beside him, Victoria Caldwell shone like polished silver, her hand never leaving his arm. Together they looked unshakable, the perfect image of power and grace. Then Harold's gaze fell upon the three young women standing at the edge of the hall. He slowed, his brow furrowed. Something about their faces unsettled him. He stepped closer, his voice low but sharp. "Have we met before?" Mia's throat tightened. The weight of his eyes was unbearable. Lily shrank back, clutching her purse, while Emma's jaw clenched as though bracing for battle. Victoria's grip on Harold's arm tightened. Her smile faltered. She leaned in, whispering through clenched teeth, "Ignore them. This is our night." But Harold couldn't. He stared, unsettled, as though a ghost had risen in front of him. The sisters held their ground. Guests nearby paused, sensing something strange. The music no longer filled the room. Instead, tension grew, sharp and unspoken. Harold's question still hung in the air. Who were these young women, and why did their faces feel so painfully familiar? The silence between them thickened. Mia's lips trembled, but she forced the words out. "My name is Mia Morgan. This is Lily. This is Emma." Her voice cracked, but she did not stop. "We are the daughters of Eleanor Morgan." The name struck Harold like a blow. His face drained of color. The room seemed to tilt, voices in the background fading to a blur. Eleanor Morgan, a name buried deep in his past, sealed away with guilt and silence. Victoria stiffened, her eyes narrowing. She looked from Harold to the girls and back again. "Who are they?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. Harold's lips parted, but no answer came. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady but cold. "You remember her. Don't pretend you don't. She worked with you, she loved you, and she raised us alone." Gasps rippled through the guests nearby. Whispers rose, sharp and quick, spreading across the hall like fire. Harold's chest tightened. Eleanor's name echoed in his mind, dragging with it memories he had spent decades trying to bury. And now, standing before him, were living reminders that the past had finally found him. Harold's eyes clouded as the memories returned. Eleanor Morgan, bright, determined, full of life. She had been his research assistant in 1997, sharp enough to challenge him, bold enough to inspire him. Their connection had been undeniable, but the world he lived in had no room for her. And then, one day, she was gone. The sisters' voices cut through his silence. "She never told you, did she?" Mia's words trembled, each one soaked in pain. "She was pregnant. With us. Gasps rippled again through the crowd. Victoria's hand tightened into a fist, her nails digging into her palm. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "A fabrication. A desperate lie." Emma's voice shook, but she pressed on. "She raised us alone. She worked herself to the bone. She never asked for help, never asked for a dime. And when she was dying, she told us the truth, that you were our father." Harold staggered back, his hand gripping the edge of a chair for support. Eleanor's face filled his mind. The smile he once knew, the warmth he had lost. The reality struck like thunder. While he built an empire, she had carried the weight of life alone. The hall buzzed with whispers, tension rising like a storm. Mia's hand shook as she reached into her purse. Slowly, she pulled out a folded envelope. Her voice quivered, but her eyes held steady. "We have proof." She opened the paper, her fingers trembling against the crisp edges. "This is the DNA test. It confirms what our mother told us. Harold Spencer, you are our father." The words fell heavy into the room, and then silence. Glasses froze mid-air. Forks paused above plates. Guests stared, mouths open, breath caught. Even the chandeliers seemed to dim beneath the weight of those words. Victoria's face hardened, her jaw set in fury. She stepped closer to Harold, her voice a hiss. "Don't listen to this. It's a scam. They want money." But Mia shook her head, her voice breaking. "We don't want your fortune. We don't want your empire. We just want the truth." The paper slipped from Harold's hands, landing soundlessly on the polished floor. His eyes darted from the DNA results to the faces of the three young women. Their features, their expressions, the fire in their eyes, so much of Eleanor lived in them. And in that moment, denial was impossible. The paper lay on the floor, the words DNA test glaring up at everyone. Harold's hand hovered above it, his face pale, his chest rising and falling with uneven breath. Before he could speak, Victoria's heels clicked sharply against the marble as she stepped forward. Her voice cracked through the silence. "Enough of this!" Her eyes blazed as she pointed at the sisters. "You are liars. Desperate liars. You sneak into my wedding, and you think you can tear it apart with some piece of paper?" The crowd stirred, gasps and whispers spreading from table to table. Some guests leaned closer, curiosity painted on their faces. Others turned their eyes away, afraid of being caught staring. Victoria's hand gripped Harold's sleeve tightly, almost clawing into the fabric. "Don't you see? This is a scam. They're after your money, Harold. That's all this is. A spectacle." Mia's jaw tightened, her knuckles white around her clutch. Lily lowered her gaze, her cheeks wet with silent tears. Emma stood rigid, her chest heaving with anger. The room shifted. Lines were drawn without a word. Victoria stood as the defender of wealth and reputation. The sisters stood as shadows from the past, armed only with their truth. Emma stepped forward, her voice trembling yet fierce. "You think we want your money?" Her eyes locked on Victoria, but her words carried to everyone. "Our mother raised us alone. She worked 2 jobs. She went without meals so we could eat. She fought sickness in silence, all because she never wanted to beg." Gasps broke from the tables. Some women pressed their hands to their mouths, eyes wide with sympathy. The men shifted uneasily, stealing glances at Harold. Emma's tears spilled now, unstoppable. Not one check, not one call, not even a letter. She carried us, protected us, and loved us, without a single word from you. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. And when she was dying, she told us the truth, that Harold Spencer was our father. Lily sobbed quietly, covering her face. Mia gripped her sister's hands, holding them steady as Emma's words cut deeper into the silence. Victoria's face flushed with rage, but the tide had turned. The guests murmured louder, their voices no longer whispers but sharp judgment. The story was shifting before their eyes. And Harold could not look away. Every word was a blade carving open wounds he had long denied. Harold bent slowly, his hand shaking as he picked up the paper from the floor. His eyes scanned the lines, but the words blurred. The DNA results stared back at him, undeniable. His vision clouded as the weight of the past pressed down. Eleanor. Her name rose in his chest like a ghost. He saw her smile again, soft and unguarded. He heard her laugh in the late nights of research, the warmth she carried into his cold, ambitious world. And he remembered the day she vanished. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Now the truth burned through him. She hadn't left without reason. She had carried his children. She had borne that burden alone. His hand clutched the paper tighter until it crumpled in his palm. His voice broke in a whisper, almost too soft to hear. Eleanor. Mia's face blurred through his tears. For a moment, she was Eleanor, her eyes, her fire, her unyielding strength. The resemblance struck him like lightning. Harold's knees weakened. He steadied himself against the table, his heart pounding with regret. The empire he had built, the life of wealth and triumph, it all felt hollow now, compared to the truth staring him in the eyes. Victoria's heels clicked sharply as she stepped in front of Harold, shielding him from the sisters. Her eyes narrowed, her voice sharp and cutting. This is nothing but a stunt, a trick to claw at his fortune. Don't be fooled. This is all about money. Her words sliced through the hall, but before the whispers could swell, Mia straightened her back. Her voice rang clear, steady, despite the tremor in her chest. We don't want money. Lily's voice followed, softer, but no less certain. We don't need his fortune. And then Emma's, fierce and unshaken. We want the truth, nothing else. Their voices rose together, not rehearsed, but united by pain. We don't want money. The room shifted. Guests who had leaned forward in suspicion now leaned back, startled. The contrast was sharp. Victoria dripping in jewels, clutching the billionaire's arm, speaking of wealth. The sisters stood in simple emerald dresses, speaking of truth and blood. For the first time that night, doubt began to stir in the crowd. Perhaps these young women were not intruders chasing gold. Perhaps they were daughters chasing something far more fragile. Acknowledgement, justice, a father's face they had never known. Mia stepped forward, her hands trembling as she held back tears. Her voice was quiet at first, but the silence of the hall carried every word. Before our mother died, she called us to her bedside. She was weak, her breath fading, but her eyes still burned with strength. Lily's hand reached for Emma's, steadying her sister as Mia continued. She told us she had carried the truth for 25 years. She never spoke of it, not once because she didn't want pity. She didn't want shame, but at the end, she couldn't leave without telling us who we were. Emma's voice cracked as she whispered. She said, "Find him. Tell him. He deserves to know, and so do you." Gasps echoed. A few women dabbed their eyes, moved by the image of a dying mother's final plea. The words carried the weight of sacrifice, of a love that had endured without recognition. Mia's voice broke as she finished. She didn't ask for riches. She didn't ask for anything but truth. And we came here tonight because it was her last wish. We couldn't let her leave this world unheard. The sisters bowed their heads, united in grief and devotion. Harold's lips parted, his voice a hoarse whisper. Eleanor is dead? The sisters froze. None of them could answer, not with words. Their silence was answer enough. The weight of it crushed Harold's chest. His knees weakened as though the marble beneath him might give way. He staggered back, gripping the edge of a chair to steady himself. For years, he had buried the memory of her, convincing himself she had simply walked away. But now, the truth hit harder than any blow. She had stayed. She had raised his children, and she had died carrying the truth alone. The hall fell into hushed sorrow. A woman in the front row pressed her hand to her chest. Men shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet Harold's eyes. The chandeliers above glittered, cold and distant, as though mocking the grief that now swallowed the room. Harold's voice cracked again, barely a whisper. Eleanor. Gone? His shoulders shook, his proud frame collapsing under years of regret. Mia's eyes filled with tears, but she stood firm. She's gone, but she left us with her strength, and with her truth. The silence was heavy, not with judgment this time, but with shared grief that touched every heart. The hall buzzed with tension, voices rising like a restless tide. Security began to move forward, ready to drag the sisters out. Harold lifted his hand sharply. No, he ordered, his voice firm but shaking. Leave them. The guards froze, confused. Harold drew a long breath, then turned to the sisters. Come with me. Gasps swept through the guests as he led them down a side corridor, his bride left behind, her face frozen in fury. The doors to the main ballroom closed behind them, muffling the chaos. Ahead lay his study, a room of leather chairs, heavy books, and silence. Inside, Harold motioned for them to sit. His hands trembled as he poured himself a glass of water, but he didn't drink. Instead, he stared at them across the polished desk. Mia, Lily, and Emma sat close together, shoulders touching. Their breaths were shallow, their faces tense, but their eyes never wavered. For the first time there was no crowd, no flashing lights, no judgmental stares, just a father, 3 daughters, and a truth that refused to be buried any longer. Harold's voice dropped to a whisper. "Let me look at you. All of you." The study was dim, lit only by a single lamp. Harold's eyes moved slowly from one face to the next, searching for traces of a woman he had once loved. Mia's gaze met his first. Strong, unyielding, filled with fire, just like Eleanor when she argued her point in the lab, refusing to back down. Lily looked at him with soft eyes, full of compassion even in her pain. Eleanor's kindness, her warmth, alive again. Then Emma, sharp, fierce, her jaw set, her posture defiant. The same stubborn pride Eleanor carried when she refused to compromise her beliefs. Harold's throat tightened. He saw Eleanor in all of them. In their eyes, in their voices, even in the way they sat. It was undeniable. His breath caught as memories surged. Long nights of work, whispered laughter, a smile that had once kept him human. And now, here they were, echoes of that past made flesh. His lips quivered as he whispered, "You are hers, every part of you." The sisters stayed silent, but tears shimmered in their eyes. For the first time, Harold wasn't looking at strangers. He was looking at his daughters. Silence hung heavy until Mia broke it, her voice steady. "We're not just Eleanor's daughters. We've built our lives, too." Harold leaned forward, his brows furrowed. Mia continued, her chin high. "I'm a software engineer. I design systems for hospitals." Lily's voice trembled, but she spoke with quiet pride. "I'm a pediatrician. I take care of children who don't have anyone else." Emma's tone was sharper, almost defiant. "And I'm a lawyer. I fight for people who don't have a voice." Harold's hands trembled on the desk. His chest rose and fell as he looked at them. 3 young women, strong, accomplished, everything he should have known but never did. His eyes blurred with tears. "You did all this? Without me?" His voice cracked, raw with regret. "You became everything. And I wasn't there." Mia swallowed hard, her lips pressed tight. "We had no choice. We had each other, and we had her." Harold's pride and shame collided, tearing through him. He wanted to smile at their strength, yet he wanted to fall to his knees for having missed it all. He whispered again, his voice breaking. "My daughters." Mia reached into her purse and drew out a folded envelope, its edges worn, its paper yellowed from time. She held it out with trembling fingers. "She wanted you to have this. She wrote it before she died." Harold stared at the letter as though it might burn him. His hand shook as he took it. The paper was soft, fragile, yet unbearably heavy. He opened it slowly. Eleanor's handwriting curved across the page, each word a ghost pulling him back. His lips moved as he read silently, though the sisters already knew the words by heart. "Harold, if you are reading this, I am gone. I don't blame you for the choices you made, but I could not let our daughters grow without knowing the truth. They are strong. They are kind. They are ours. Be proud of them, even if from afar. And if fate is merciful, let them know you." Tears streamed down Harold's face, falling onto the paper. His shoulders shook as he clutched the letter to his chest. The sisters watched in silence, their own tears flowing. For the first time, Harold wasn't the untouchable billionaire. He was a man broken by love, regret, and loss. Harold clutched the letter to his chest, tears streaming down his face. The room was silent, heavy with grief, and then, sharp footsteps echoed in the hall. The door to the study swung open with force. Victoria stepped in, her gown sweeping the floor, her face cold as stone. Her eyes locked on Harold, then darted to the sisters. Her voice cut through the silence. "So, this is it? You'll throw away our wedding, our life, because of them?" Harold rose from his chair, the letter still trembling in his hand. His lips parted, but no words came. Victoria's tone sharpened, louder now. "I stood by you when the world demanded more. I became your partner, your shield. And now, on the very day I pledged myself to you, you're ready to betray me?" The sisters stayed silent, their presence alone defying her words. Victoria's chest heaved, her diamond necklace catching the light as she pointed at them. "You don't see what's happening. They want to ruin us. They want to tear everything apart." Harold's eyes shifted between his bride and his daughters. The air was suffocating. For the first time, the man who had commanded boardrooms and conquered industries stood powerless. torn between love built on ambition and blood bound by truth. Victoria's voice dropped lower, filled with venom. This isn't about love, it's about inheritance, about empire. She turned to the sisters, her words a dagger. Isn't that what you want? His billions, his name, his world. Emma's face flushed with anger. She stepped forward, her voice sharp. We don't want his empire. Lily's voice broke, softer, aching. We never asked for his money, not a single dollar. Mia's tone cut like steel. We only want the truth, to know where we came from, to know he sees us. For a moment, silence filled the room again, but the accusations had planted seeds. Guests outside whispered louder, rumors already spilling through the walls. In the shadows of wealth, no one ever believed a story could be free of greed. Victoria folded her arms, her lips curling. Say what you will. The world won't believe you, not when there's this much at stake. Harold's hands shook around Eleanor's letter. His heart ached, torn between two realities, the empire he built and the daughters who asked only to be acknowledged. Before Harold could respond, another voice entered the room, deeper, younger, edged with disbelief. Father? All eyes turned to the doorway. William Spencer stood there, tall and poised, his tuxedo crisp, his expression unreadable. The only son Harold had ever claimed. He stepped into the study slowly, his gaze locked on the sisters, his brow furrowed, confusion clouding his face. Who are they? And why are they here? Victoria moved quickly, grasping his arm. They are intruders, William. Pretending to be family. Don't listen. But William's eyes lingered on the sisters. He studied their features, the sharp lines, the steady gaze, the resemblance he couldn't deny. His voice softened, almost a whisper. They look like her. Mia stood taller, her voice firm. We are Eleanor's daughters. That makes us your sisters. The room fell still again. William's eyes widened, torn between denial and something deeper, something he couldn't yet name. The perfect world he knew, the empire, the legacy, was cracking, and through that crack came a truth he had never been prepared to face. Later that evening, Harold gathered them at his mansion. The long dining table stretched like a battlefield. Candles flickered across polished silverware. The air was heavy, too heavy for the food untouched before them. At one end sat Harold, shoulders stiff, the weight of two worlds pressing down. Beside him, Victoria's smile was frozen, her eyes sharp as glass. Across from her sat Mia, Lily, and Emma, their posture firm but guarded. William occupied the middle ground, restless, his gaze shifting from his father to the strangers who claimed to be blood. No one touched the plates. Forks lay still, glasses untouched. The silence was thick, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on the wall. Harold finally spoke, his voice low. This is not how I imagined us together, but you are here, and you deserve to be heard. The sisters exchanged a glance, their resolve steady. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. William leaned back, arms crossed, suspicion still clouding his face. It wasn't a dinner, it was a trial, and the verdict had yet to be written. The quiet broke with Victoria's voice. Cold, sharp. Let's stop pretending. Tell us why you're here. Is it love you want, or is it money? Her words echoed through the room. The sisters froze for a breath. Then Mia leaned forward. Her voice was steady, stripped of fear. We came for the truth. Victoria scoffed, her laughter brittle. The truth, or the inheritance? Don't dress up greed as justice. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but her voice carried across the table. If we wanted money, we would have asked long ago. We grew up with nothing. Our mother worked herself sick, and we never once reached for your name. Emma's tone cut sharper. We don't want his empire. We don't want his billions. We want to be acknowledged. The table trembled under the weight of their words. Victoria leaned back, folding her arms with disdain. Harold's gaze dropped to his daughters, his chest aching. The room was divided, wealth and power on one side, blood and truth on the other. William's fork clinked against his plate as he set it down. His voice was quiet, almost uncertain. You expect me to believe all this? That you're my sisters? Emma met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. We're not asking you to believe. We're asking you to see us. For a long moment, he said nothing. His eyes searched their faces, each one a reflection of something he had never known. The way Mia's chin lifted in defiance, the softness in Lily's smile even through pain, the fire burning in Emma's eyes. He remembered his childhood, the loneliness of being an only child, the weight of being the heir. the endless pressure to carry the Spencer name. Something shifted in his chest. His voice cracked as he whispered, "All my life. I wanted siblings. I wanted someone to stand beside me." The sisters said nothing, but their silence was an answer. William leaned back, his suspicion fading, replaced by a quiet, dangerous hope. For the first time, the walls around his heart trembled. By morning, the story had already spread. Headlines lit up every screen. Billionaire's wedding crashed by 3 secret daughters. Photos of Mia, Lily, and Emma walking into the glittering hall were plastered across social feeds. Comment sections overflowed with shock, outrage, and fascination. Talk shows dissected the scandal. Some hosts praised the sisters for their courage, others accused them of plotting for wealth. News anchors replayed the moment Mia raised the DNA papers, freezing Harold Spencer's face on screen, a billionaire undone by 3 words: "We are yours." At his estate, Harold sat in silence, his phone buzzing endlessly. Business partners demanded answers. Shareholders feared damage to his empire, but none of it mattered compared to the truth now echoing across the world. The sisters stayed quiet, watching the frenzy unfold. For them, this wasn't about trending hashtags or media spin. It was about a man who had turned his back and a father they still hoped to know. The storm outside grew louder. Inside the mansion, the real battle was only beginning, between loyalty and betrayal, love and pride, family and empire. Victoria stood in the doorway of Harold's study, her face pale with fury. She had endured the headlines, the whispers, the humiliation, but tonight she couldn't hold it in. "You let them destroy us," she hissed, her voice sharp as glass. "Do you even realize what you've done? Our wedding is a joke. The world is laughing at me, at us." Harold looked up slowly, his eyes weary. "This is not about the world, Victoria." She stepped closer, her hands clenched. "It's about me. I gave you everything. I stood by your side, I carried your name, and this is how you repay me? By dragging ghosts into our life?" Harold's voice deepened, heavy with something unshakable. "They are not ghosts. They are my daughters. This is my family." Victoria recoiled, stunned. His words cut deeper than any headline. For the first time, she saw the choice in his eyes, and she wasn't part of it. The silence stretched, broken only by the crack in her voice. "If you choose them, you lose me." Harold didn't answer. His silence was enough. That night, Harold called the sisters to the library. The fire burned low, casting shadows across the walls. He stood before them, the letter from Eleanor still folded in his pocket. His voice trembled at first, then grew steady. "I spent 25 years building towers, companies, an empire, but I lost something I can never rebuild. I lost you." Mia's lips pressed tight, her eyes shining. Lily wiped a tear, while Emma crossed her arms, though her jaw quivered. Harold stepped closer, his hand shaking as he reached out but didn't quite touch. "I cannot erase the years you grew up without me. I cannot take back her pain. But I will not waste another day." His eyes locked with theirs, filled with regret and resolve. "I've lost 25 years. I will not lose one more." The room filled with silence, thick with the weight of his words. For the first time, the billionaire did not sound like a man of power. He sounded like a father begging for a second chance. The sisters said nothing, but something unspoken passed between them: hope, fear, and the fragile seed of forgiveness. Money fades. Empires crumble. Even love built on status can fall apart, but what remains is family. The truth of sacrifice, the echo of a mother's love. Eleanor gave everything, her strength, her years, her very life, so her daughters might one day stand tall. And tonight, they did. They found their father. The world outside still whispered and judged, but inside Harold's home, something had shifted. The story was no longer about wealth or reputation. It was about 3 young women who carried their mother's courage and a man who finally faced the cost of his silence. Harold had built towers of glass and steel, yet he had almost lost the only foundation that mattered. Now, through tears and regret, he had a chance to choose again. And so the question remains. If you were Harold, standing between pride and family, what would you choose? Would you cling to glory, or would you reach for the love that never fades? Take a moment to reflect. Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you can follow what happens next. Because the journey of Harold Spencer and his daughters is far from over.
Life had grown quiet. Serena liked it that way. Her phone buzzed on the counter. John's name lit up the screen. She didn't flinch anymore. The hurt had long fossilized into numb indifference. She swiped to answer and placed it on speaker without a second thought. He often called to discuss child support logistics or made excuses about missed visitation weekends. Emotionally, he was distant, like a ghost that still paid bills. Welcome to Love and Twilight, the place where emotions meet storytelling and every heart finds its voice. Here, we dive into moments that touch the soul, inspire reflection, and spark meaningful conversations. If you've ever longed for deeper connections, this is your safe space. Don't just watch. Be part of this journey. Like, share, and subscribe to stay connected. And if you haven't watched the part 1, please click the link in the description. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice makes this community complete. Today, he sounded annoyed. Rousey's threatening to go to the press. She thinks I should take the girls out more, make it look like I'm involved, he said, sighing as if parenthood were a PR campaign. Serena didn't speak. And Serena, this whole setup with her, it was a mistake. The girls, too. Their complications. I should have just stayed focused. Now I'm cleaning up the past every week. She froze. The spatula in her hand trembled. Her eyes darted toward the living room. Dara was no longer playing. She was standing by the doorframe, and she had heard everything. Serena ended the call without a word. Her fingers were stiff with rage, but her voice stayed calm. Dara, she said softly, crouching down. The little girl's eyes were wide, too mature for a 10-year-old. He said, I'm a mistake. No, Serena said firmly. You are my miracle. Then why did he say that? There it was, the question that knocked the breath out of her lungs. Why? Why would the man who once whispered love against her skin call their children mistakes? Serena pulled Dara close. The pancake batter started to burn on the stove, filling the kitchen with the smell of something once sweet, now bitter. That night, Serena sat by the edge of her daughter's bed. Dora had already drifted off. Dara stared at the ceiling, eyes blinking in rhythm with the fan. Mom, she whispered, do mistakes get to wear crowns? Serena's voice caught. What do you mean, baby? I saw your photo in that red dress. You looked like a queen, but Daddy said we're mistakes. So, do we get to be queens too? Serena didn't cry. Not yet. But something changed in her eyes. Back in her bedroom, she opened her drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside was the card of a family lawyer. She had kept it for years. Not out of spite, but preparation. She had forgiven many things. But what Dara heard today was unforgivable. Not for her own pride, but for what it would teach her daughter if she let it slide. Daughters inherit silence as easily as strength. And Serena was done being silent. The next morning, she called Clara. Her friend didn't ask questions. Clara simply came over, took the girls to the park, and made sure Serena had space to think. Serena sat at the dining table, red pen in hand, drawing circles around custody terms and filing clauses. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about John anymore. It was about Dara's question, and making sure neither of her daughters ever had to ask it again. Later that week, John texted Serena asking if he could take the girls to a business event for press optics. She didn't respond with anger. She responded with legal documents. A motion was filed, full custody retention and review. She didn't want him gone. She wanted accountability, and she wanted her daughters to know that their mother did not let men label them like accidents. That evening, Dara watched Serena type at the computer. Are you writing a story? Serena smiled gently. No, sweetheart. I'm writing a beginning. The park was quiet that evening, the kind of silence only a mother could interpret. Serena sat on the bench, her eyes following Dara as she swung in slow, thoughtful circles, feet barely brushing the sand below. Dora chased a butterfly nearby, oblivious, free. But Dara's face was shadowed. Too much had settled on her young shoulders. Serena stood, approached the swing, and gently slowed it. Dara didn't meet her eyes. I heard everything, Mommy. I know, Serena replied, kneeling in the sand. And I wish you hadn't. Dara's voice was small. He didn't mean it, did he? Serena's throat clenched. This was the moment. Not to spin truth into comfort, but to wrap hard truth in love. I don't know what he meant, Dara. But I do know what I mean when I say you're not a mistake. You and your sister, you're my heart with legs. You were chosen by love, grown in courage. Dara stared ahead. But if he doesn't want us, does that mean we're less? Serena sat beside her in the sand, dress wrinkling beneath her. No. Sweetheart, listen to me. Some people are blind to beauty they didn't build. That doesn't make the beauty less real. It makes them not ready. But I want a dad who's ready. Serena's eyes filled. She had guarded her daughters from so much, but she couldn't guard them from longing. I know, baby, and maybe one day he'll try to be. But your worth isn't based on his readiness. It's based on your existence. That night, Serena tucked Dara and Dora into bed with matching satin bonnets and whispered blessings. After the lights dimmed, she stepped onto the small balcony with Clara's words echoing in her mind. Children don't remember what you protected them from. They remember how you reacted when the world didn't. Serena took out her journal. Entry, she asked if she's a mistake. I didn't just say no. I decided to prove it. At work the next day, Serena's colleague handed her a flyer. Women's Empowerment Week, legal aid volunteers needed. Thought of you. Serena looked at it. Normally she'd say no, stay in her corner, quiet and unnoticed. But not today. She signed up. Her shift was only for a few hours. But something shifted inside her. A woman across the table sobbed as she signed her restraining order request. Serena listened, not as a legal aid, but as someone who had once waited too long to walk away. At home, Serena stared at the lawyer's number again. This time she didn't hesitate. Ms. Woods, the voice answered. What can I do for you? I want to file a response. My ex is seeking shared custody, but I want full retention for emotional safety, for clarity, for my daughters. The woman paused. You have documentation? Yes. Texts, records, and I'm ready to speak. Serena wasn't trembling. She was focused. Later that evening, Serena prepared dinner. Dara came to the kitchen, arms crossed. Mom, if Daddy wants to see us again, will you let him? Serena turned the stove off, knelt down again. Eye level. I won't keep you from love, Dara, but I will keep you from pain. What if he promises not to say stuff like that again? Then he can prove it. Not with promises, with actions. Dara nodded. Slowly. Okay. There was a pause. Then she whispered, will you wear the red dress again? The one from your photo? Serena blinked. Why? Because you looked powerful in it, and I want to be powerful too. Later that night, Serena retrieved the dress from the back of the closet. She hadn't touched it in months. The satin was slightly wrinkled. The memory it carried was not. She ran her fingers over the neckline and whispered, this time, I wear it for her. She held it up in front of the mirror. Not for vanity, but as armor. Serena stood before her hallway mirror, not to admire, but to center herself. She had taken hits in silence, been overlooked in crowded rooms, dismissed in heated boardroom arguments, but never again in her own daughter's presence. A mistake? No, she was a mother. She was their first example, and that title carried weight, more than she'd ever let him realize. She tucked the red dress back into its box and reached for a black folder instead. Inside it, years of screenshots, receipts, silence turned into evidence. Every time John said not now, every moment she paid for ballet shoes and he claimed he was in a meeting, every screenshot of his texts to Rousey, some mocking, others just cruel, none paternal. She had never meant to use them, but Dara had asked, are we mistakes? That shifted everything. The next morning, Serena walked into a downtown office tower, neutral blazer, tight bun, calm eyes. Her lawyer, Mrs. Ingram, greeted her with a nod. You're certain you want to proceed? Yes. But I want you to know, I'm not doing this to hurt him. Mrs. Ingram nodded slowly. Understood. I'm doing this because my daughter asked me if she's a mistake, and I need to make sure she never asks that again. No rage, no theatrics, just resolve. In the weeks that followed, John was served with the notice. Full custody motion with psychological grounds. He didn't respond immediately. Then came the email. Subject, you've got to be kidding me. I don't have time for courtroom drama. What are you trying to prove, Serena? You're making this public? For what? To play the victim? Serena didn't reply. She simply forwarded the email to Mrs. Ingram, who attached it to the affidavit. That Saturday, Serena took Dora and Dora to a community poetry event at the library. Dora read a poem about clouds. Dara whispered that she wanted to write one next time, about mommies who wear crowns. And while they were painting wooden bookmarks, Serena stepped aside to take a call. It was John. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm not doing anything to you, John," she said. "I'm doing something for them. They're my kids too." "Then you should have acted like it before the custody motion arrived, not after. You think a judge is going to hand you everything because you've got some emotional story?" Serena's tone didn't shift. "No. But they might when they see the receipts." He paused, then chuckled bitterly. "So this is about revenge?" "No. This is about making sure my daughters don't grow up thinking love sounds like silence." Click. That evening, Serena ironed the red dress, not to wear it, but because she was getting it framed. Clara watched from the door, arms crossed. "You're serious about this?" Serena didn't look up. "I have to be." Clara nodded, then whispered, "You're doing the right thing. They'll remember this one day, not the court date, but the way their mother never folded." Serena hung the dress on a wide hanger, smoothed the fabric, and whispered to herself, "This isn't war, this is clarity." The hearing date was set. Serena didn't notify John of what she'd submit. He would learn like everyone else in the courtroom. But she did email him a single sentence the night before, "If there are complications, as you said. Then tomorrow, you'll explain what you meant, under oath." No reply, just a read receipt. At the courthouse, Serena walked in holding Dora's small drawing in her handbag, a crayon sketch of a woman with a crown and two little girls beside her. She clutched it, not because she needed courage, but because she already had it. Mrs. Ingram met her at the door. "Today, we don't fight, we reveal." Serena smiled. "I'm not here to battle. I'm here to shine light." John adjusted his cufflinks as he paced outside the courtroom. His suit was sharp, his jaw clean-shaven, his assistant whispering pre-safe soundbites in his ear. To the public, he was a man fighting for access to his children. A father wronged. A misunderstood executive trying to repair his image. Behind closed doors, the reality was different. This wasn't about his daughters. This was about control, about headlines, about Rousey threatening to expose their conversations, unless he made some kind of public move to look like a family man. "File for joint custody," she had said over wine one night. "Even if you don't win, it'll show effort." People like men who fight for their kids. He didn't love Serena anymore. He wasn't even sure he had ever loved her, but he did love his image, and it was cracking. So here he was, not to reunite with Dara and Dora, but to defend his reputation. Inside the courtroom, Serena sat beside Mrs. Ingram in silence. She wore a simple beige dress. No red, no dramatics, but her presence shifted the atmosphere. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't shrinking. She was prepared. Mrs. Ingram leaned in. "He's going to try to act like this is about love. Let him. You have truth." Serena nodded. Across the aisle, John entered with his attorney, Mr. Denley, sleek and smug, a man used to closing settlements before emotions ever reached the table. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Denley stood first. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Woods, is a devoted father seeking to reestablish a more consistent presence in his daughters' lives. He regrets past distance but has taken strides to correct this. He is requesting partial custody to allow for bonding in suppo RT." He sat. No tremble, no apology, just a performance. Mrs. Ingram rose slowly, unfolded a file, then handed a stack of pages to the clerk. "Your Honor, we present Exhibit A." On screen, text messages appeared. "John Woods, Rousey. I can't be seen with those girls right now. It'll raise questions. Let Serena handle them. It's not my lane." The redhead one. "What's her name again?" Gasps rippled softly through the courtroom. The judge's brow furrowed. Mrs. Ingram continued. "Exhibit B includes financial control documents. Mr. Woods limited Serena's access to joint funds during her pregnancy. She was forced to take out personal loans to cover hospital bills." She paused. "Exhibit C shows his refusal to attend school events, doctor visits, or public outings with his daughters. In one email, he states, quote, 'They're bad for business optics.'" John shifted uncomfortably. Denley stood. "Objection. These statements are taken out of context and—" The judge raised a hand. "I'll allow it." Silence. Serena didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She watched John. He looked like a man exposed, not for what he did, but for what he failed to protect. Then came the part no one expected. The judge turned to him. Mr. Woods, why have you never taken your daughters to a public function? John blinked. I was busy, running companies. It's not that I didn't care, but why hide them? John opened his mouth. No words came. The silence hung. Then, it wasn't hiding, it was timing. And what values do you plan to teach them if awarded custody? He stared, then muttered that people can change. The judge leaned back. Do you believe they should ever feel like mistakes? John looked down. Dara and Dora were not in the room. Serena had made sure of that. This wasn't a show for them. This was justice in their name. Mrs. Ingram closed her argument calmly. My client isn't asking to cut a father out of their lives. She's asking to protect her daughters from confusion, neglect, and branding. Children should not be accessories to a reputation. They are individuals. And they deserve consistency, safety, and love that doesn't depend on cameras. The judge nodded slowly. A recess was called. John stepped outside, breathing heavily, jaw clenched. His assistant approached with a phone in hand. We've got press outside. Want to spin a statement? He didn't answer. Back inside, Serena sat alone in the hallway. Mrs. Ingram had gone to get coffee. The courtroom doors were shut. John approached. Was that necessary? He asked quietly. Serena looked up. Yes. You embarrassed me. No. You embarrassed yourself when you forgot you were a father. He shook his head. You used to be the woman who cried at midnight because I missed a birthday. She nodded. I was, and now I'm the woman who shows her daughters what accountability looks like. He stared at her, this version of Serena unfamiliar, unreachable. Then the bailiff called them back in. The judge returned and addressed the room. After reviewing the evidence, the court finds that partial custody would cause more harm than benefit to the minor children involved. Full legal and physical custody is awarded to Miss Serena Woods. Mr. Woods may apply for supervised visitation, pending evaluation. There was no applause, no tears, just a verdict, a quiet finality. John sat down slowly, hands gripping his knees. Serena stood, and without looking back, she walked out of the courtroom, paperwork in one hand, purpose in the other. The day of the final hearing, Serena didn't dress for battle. She dressed for legacy. She stepped into the hallway of her apartment in a soft gold dress that hugged her without screaming. Her hair was in a crown braid, understated earrings, no makeup except a single line of eyeliner, sharp and purposeful. Dora ran up behind her holding a glittery hair clip. Put this in your hair, Mommy. It's shiny. Serena knelt down. Why this one? Because queens wear gold, Dora whispered. Serena kissed her forehead. Then I'll wear it for you. Dara stood at the doorway, backpack in hand, quiet as always. She looked at her mother for a long second, then simply nodded. Approval, pride, power. Clara arrived moments later to take the girls to school. Serena turned to her once the girls were buckled in the back seat. If this goes the wrong way, I'll still know I stood up for them. Clara shook her head. It won't. But even if it did, you already won. They've seen you rise. At the courthouse, reporters gathered, though none dared to hound Serena directly. She walked past them, calm, focused. She didn't flash smiles, didn't issue statements, just walked. Inside, John sat waiting, stone-faced in a charcoal suit. Rousey was not with him this time. His lawyer adjusted a stack of papers and avoided Serena's eyes. The judge entered and asked for final statements. John's team declined. Mrs. Ingram stood. Your Honor, we believe this matter speaks for itself. What's at stake today isn't just custody, it's credibility, stability, and the message these children will internalize about who stood for them when their identities were questioned. She stepped back. Serena remained seated. Her silence carried more weight than any testimony. The judge opened the folder in front of him. He read for a few moments before lifting his gaze. Before I deliver my judgment, I'd like to ask Mr. Woods a final question. John straightened in his chair. When was the last time you told your daughters you loved them, face to face, not through a gift or card? John blinked. I'm sure I said it last. Please don't speculate. When was it? John swallowed. I can't recall the exact date. The judge turned the page. And when was the last time you were seen in public with them? John didn't respond. I understand that reputation management is a consideration in high-profile lives, but children are not to be managed. They're to be raised He looked over at Serena. "You may not be loud, Miss Woods, but you are clear. You've built your case not out of hatred but principle. And that distinction is everything." When the ruling was handed down, full legal and physical custody to Serena was supervised. Visits contingent on psychological assessment. Serena didn't react outwardly. No sigh, no tears. She simply nodded once. John slouched forward in his chair, the weight of consequences finally settling in. The courtroom was quiet. Not defeated, just shifted. Later that afternoon, Serena walked the long hallway toward the exit. Her heels echoed against marble floors. The sunlight from the tall glass windows touched the hem of her gold dress like a final benediction. John stood near the door, alone, pale, silent. She didn't slow, didn't acknowledge, just walked, because some things no longer needed to be said. Outside, Clara and the girls waited in the car. When Serena opened the door, Dara asked, "Was it scary?" Serena smiled faintly. "A little, but you went anyway." "Yes, baby. Then you're even stronger than your red dress." Serena laughed softly. "I think I am." Dora reached forward with her tiny hand. "Can we have pancakes tonight?" "Absolutely," Serena replied. "We're celebrating." "What are we celebrating?" Dara asked. Serena looked at them both in the rearview mirror. Peace. That evening she hung the gold dress beside the red one in her closet. She didn't need them anymore, not as armor. But they were reminders of the day she stood tall, and the day she walked away without fear. John sat in the courtroom gallery the following week, eyes fixed on the wood. Grain of the defense table, no longer rehearsing charm or confident counters. His hands were clasped. His tie was slightly loosened. His voice had gone quiet over the past few days, not out of reflection, but discomfort. Serena entered behind Mrs. Ingram, steady and composed. She didn't glance at him. Today's session wasn't about filing or argument. It was about official record, verbal clarification of the court's reasoning before final documentation would be sealed. But the judge had chosen to address them both directly. The courtroom was smaller today. No press, no cameras, only decisions. The judge set aside his gavel, folded his hands. "Mr. Woods," he began, "you've presented yourself as a man who wants to reclaim his position as father. And yet the record is heavy with contradictions." John's jaw tightened. "You referred to your children, on record, as complications. Do you understand the impact of that language on two growing girls?" "I didn't mean it that way," John mumbled. "How did you mean it?" "I meant that the situation was complicated, that I wasn't prepared. And were they born out of some accident you didn't choose?" "No," John said. "But I was pressured." The judge raised a brow. "Pressured? To love your children? To accept fatherhood at a time when I wasn't ready? And yet you continued to engage in relationships, make business expansions, attend galas, but public fatherhood was inconvenient?" John didn't answer. The silence dragged. Serena didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Her daughters were not present, but she carried them in posture, in the curve of her spine that no longer bent for him. The judge continued. "This court is not merely a room for punishment. It's a place where clarity must emerge. Your daughters are not attached to a lawsuit. They are humans with memories forming right now. Their emotional clock does not wait for your convenience." John's throat moved, but no words came out. The judge turned to Serena. "Miss Woods, you've withheld bitterness. That is rare. And it shows that your intention here is not retaliation but repair." She nodded once. Then came the unexpected moment. The judge gestured for both attorneys to sit down. He spoke directly to John and Serena. "I'm going to ask you both a question, not as litigants, as people." They looked at him. To the mother, "What would healing look like for your daughters?" Serena breathed out slowly. "Healing would look like stability, routines uninterrupted by disappointment, days where their value isn't conditional, and nights where their memories of love aren't mixed with confusion." The judge nodded. "And to the father, what does redemption mean to you outside this courtroom?" John swallowed hard. His voice was hoarse. "Being allowed to show them, eventually, that I can learn, that I didn't see clearly before, that I failed to choose them." The judge leaned forward. "Then understand this. Redemption begins with truth, not performance, not statements, not signatures." He lifted the final ruling. "Custody remains fully awarded to Miss Woods. This court encourages you, Mr. Woods, to enroll in accountability And relational awareness sessions before supervised visitation can begin. In a child's life, minutes matter, but so does maturity. He stood. Session concluded. The bailiff called for the court to rise. John remained seated. He didn't weep, didn't argue, just stared. As Serena rose, she gathered her coat slowly, deliberately. Before exiting, she turned toward him, not out of sentiment, but recognition. He looked up. She said, only this. I hope the next time you speak to our daughters, you tell them their names before you explain your regrets. Then she left. Outside the courthouse, Clara waited with the car. Serena slid into the passenger seat. Clara didn't ask how it went. She didn't need to. She simply reached into the glove compartment and handed Serena a folded note. It was from Dara. In crayon she had written, "Mommy, I know you're strong, but even strong ladies get tired. I love you for always." Serena closed her eyes, breathed in deeply, and smiled for the first time that week. Not because she had won, but because her daughter had already learned what mattered most. It had been 22 days since the court ruling. Not that John was counting, yet every morning his phone sat quiet. No missed calls from Serena, no forwarded photos of the girls, no birthday invitation, no Dora lost a tooth updates, nothing. The silence was louder than any judgment. His penthouse felt bigger, too big, not in square footage. He had walked the same hallway for years. But now, everything echoed. His closet was full of designer suits, but he hadn't worn any in days. Even Rousey had stopped calling. Public relations had begun shifting their attention elsewhere. The man who once had everything had nothing but regret. John sat in the back seat of a black car, staring at a small envelope. Inside were 2 crayon drawings. One labeled Mom plus me plus Dora, all smiling, holding pancakes. The second, a blank page, with only one small figure. Standing alone, Dara's teacher had handed it to him after a required school meeting. No explanation, no judgment, just the facts. "She doesn't talk about you much," the teacher had said gently. John nodded, unable to speak. That night, he stood outside Serena's apartment building. He'd walked past it 3 times already. He didn't know what he was going to say. Didn't know if she'd slam the door or stare through him like he was invisible. But he rang the bell anyway. No driver, no assistant, just him, in worn jeans and a plain black coat. He waited. The buzzer clicked. The door opened. Serena stood there, barefaced in slippers, her robe knotted loosely. No defenses, no makeup, no courtroom armor. Just her. Her eyes met his. She didn't move. He cleared his throat. "I didn't come to argue." Silence. "I didn't come to ask for anything." Still silence. He inhaled, shaky. "I came because I realized I don't even know how to be sorry. But I am." She leaned against the doorframe, her expression unreadable. Behind her, Clara's voice called from the hallway. "I'll take the girls to my place." Dara and Dora appeared at the edge of the corridor. Quiet. Watching. Dora stepped closer, blinking. John's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, Dora," he said softly. She didn't reply, just walked to Clara's side. Then Dara. Serena still hadn't spoken. He looked down. "I said things no father should ever say." Pause. "I chose my pride over their presence, my brand over bedtime stories. I let Rousey become more real than my own children." Pause. "I told people they were mistakes because I didn't have the courage to admit I'd failed. Not them, myself." Serena folded her arms. Quiet. He looked up. "I want to speak to them, but I know that door goes through you." A long moment passed. Then, softly, "They're not here to absorb your apology." "Not yet," she said. He nodded. "I understand." Another pause. "I don't deserve anything," he added. She tilted her head. "That part is true." He swallowed hard. May I just say something? One thing to you, even if I never get to say it again?" She gave the slightest nod. He exhaled slowly. "Then, you were never the woman I discarded. You were the woman I didn't deserve, and the mother I failed to support." Her eyes flickered. Something moved behind them. Not pity, not softness, just acknowledgement. "I remember when you told me their names," she said. "You didn't even smile." He closed his eyes. "I was a coward. You were..." He looked at her again. "And I still am. A beat of silence. I'm not here to erase what I did. I'm just here to say, I know now. Serena studied him. Not the way someone studies an enemy. The way someone studies a portrait. One with damage and cracks, but traces of something that might have once been human. She stepped aside. Come in. You can sit. But this isn't a reunion. This is a conversation. He nodded quickly. Of course. Inside, he sat on the far edge of the couch, arms folded tightly. The living room looked nothing like what he remembered. Not extravagant, but full of warmth. Photos on the wall. Handmade paper crafts. A calendar with tiny hearts drawn around weekends. He stared at them, then buried his face in his hands. I missed everything. Yes, Serena said, her voice even. You did. I don't expect forgiveness. You're not owed it. He looked up. I would give anything. Just to hear them laugh again. Serena's voice dropped to a whisper. Then you start by learning why they stopped. John sat quietly, almost stiff, as though moving too much might shatter what little ground he'd managed to regain. The apartment was filled with small details he'd never noticed before. Art supplies on the shelf, Dora's tiny ballet shoes beside the coat rack, framed finger paintings on the wall. These weren't decorations. They were evidence. Evidence of the life he hadn't shown up for. Serena brought him a glass of water. No words. No softness. Just civility. He took it with a quiet thank you. She sat opposite him, not beside him. Legs crossed, posture erect, gaze steady. This isn't your moment, she began calmly. You're not here to unload your guilt and expect redemption in return. He nodded slowly. I know. You're here because a door opened. Don't mistake that for an invitation back into their lives. I'm not asking to be let back in, he said. I'm asking to stop being the shadow they trip over when no one's watching. The front door clicked. Clara re-entered with Dara and Dora, their footsteps light. John stood, unsure, and then sat back down quickly when Serena raised a hand without looking at him. The girls came in, backpacks slung low, faces curious but cautious. Serena crouched in front of them. You remember Daddy is visiting? They both nodded. Just for today, okay? Dora clung to her mother's side. Dara stood quietly, arms tucked. Serena stepped aside. John looked at them, not as a CEO, not as a man used to commanding rooms, but as a father who had failed at the most important role of all. He lowered himself to one knee. His voice cracked immediately. Hi. The girls said nothing. I've said a lot of wrong things. I've done a lot of wrong things. His eyes watered. He didn't stop them. He turned to Dara. You heard me say something you should have never heard. Her lips tightened. And you asked your mom if you were a mistake. Dara's head dropped. I want to tell you now, clearly, loudly, fully. You are not a mistake. His voice trembled, but he held her gaze. You are a miracle, a gift I never deserved. And every day I didn't show up, every party I missed, every picture I wasn't in, those weren't your fault. They were mine. Dara's chin lifted just slightly. John continued. I let my own pride drown out your laughter. I let other people who didn't matter more than you. I see that now. And I'm sorry. He turned to Dora. You used to hug me without asking. You don't anymore. I earned that. And I'm sorry. Dora blinked fast. Her small hand reached for Serena's robe, but didn't hold on this time. John didn't ask for hugs, didn't stretch his arms out. He just knelt, quietly, waiting for nothing, offering only his truth. Serena finally spoke. Words matter, John, but time matters more. I know. They need to see the man you say you're becoming. I'll show them. No more empty seats. She nodded once. Then start small. Send letters. Paint your own picture. Don't wait for mine. He stood slowly, not daring to come close. Thank you for letting me speak. Serena nodded, but didn't offer more. As John turned to leave, Dora's voice stopped him. Daddy. He froze. Her voice was so soft it almost disappeared. I made you something. He turned. Carefully. She pulled a folded paper from her school folder. It was a simple drawing, 4 figures. A mother in gold, 2 girls, and a man standing near, not in the center but present. She handed it to him. He took it as if it were glass. Tears ran freely now. When the door closed behind him, the apartment went still. Serena knelt down beside her daughters. You don't have to forgive him yet, she said gently. Dora whispered, "But I wanted to." Serena smiled faintly. "And that's your power." Dara sat beside her. "You think he'll change?" "I think he finally wants to." Dara leaned her head on Serena's shoulder. "He said I'm not a mistake." Serena kissed her crown. "You never were." That night, after the girls fell asleep, Serena lit a small candle and sat by the window. She took out her journal again. Entry. He said it. He said they are not mistakes. Not for applause. Not for attention. Just for them. And maybe that's enough for now. Step 1. Truth. The next morning, Serena sat alone in the kitchen, the scent of chamomile tea drifting through the air. Light filtered through the blinds, casting soft lines across the table. The apartment was still. The girls had gone to school early with Clara, and for once, the silence wasn't heavy. It was thoughtful. Her phone buzzed once. John Woods. "Thank you for yesterday. I'll start with letters, just like you said, and I'll wait, for as long as it takes." She read it. Didn't reply. Instead, she picked up her tea and looked over at the corner of the room where Dora had stuck her latest drawing. This one showed Serena holding a torch, not a crown. Flame, not gold. Clarity, not pageantry. She smiled. Later that day, Serena received a call from Mrs. Ingram. "John's attorney has submitted a formal request. He wants to initiate supervised visits in 2 months, assuming he completes the first stage of counseling." Serena exhaled through her nose, slowly. That's his journey. Mine is to keep the girls centered. Mrs. Ingram paused. "Do you feel comfortable signing approval?" "I'll sign it when I see consistency, not effort." Consistency. Understood. Serena ended the call and returned to folding laundry, her hands moving with practiced rhythm. She didn't want vengeance. That had never been the goal. But she had boundaries now. Non-negotiable ones. And they would not shift for apologies. That evening, John returned. He didn't text ahead. He didn't call. He simply knocked. Serena opened the door. This time, she didn't look surprised. He didn't ask to come in. He held out a thick envelope. "These are for Dara and Dora. Handwritten. 1 each. No expectations. Just words I needed them to have." Serena took the envelope, examined it, then nodded. "I'll give them the choice to read when they're ready." He lingered. "And you?" She didn't hesitate. "I've read enough." He looked down. "I know I can't undo what I did." "You can't. I know I can't ask for your heart back." "You shouldn't." He paused. "Do you hate me?" She tilted her head. "No." He looked up, and then she said it. "I forgive you." His eyes widened, moistening instantly. "You do?" "I forgive you because I need my daughters to grow up knowing that forgiveness doesn't make you weak. But," she took a breath, "forgiveness is not reunion." His face dropped. "It's not a reset, it's a release." She stepped back slightly, holding the door with one hand. "You and I are no longer written in the same sentence. That chapter is done." He nodded slowly, pain tightening every feature of his face. "And the girls? They'll decide how their chapters go, but I'll be the spine that holds them together, whether your pages stay or fall out." John didn't argue. He didn't plead. He just stood there, swallowed once, then said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying it." He turned to leave. Serena called softly behind him. "John." He paused. She looked at him, strong and unmoved. "I wish you growth, not access. Growth." He nodded, tears clinging to his lashes. Then he walked down the hallway and didn't look back. Inside, Serena set the letters on the table. When the girls came home, she didn't present them like gifts. She simply said, "He wrote you something. No pressure. You can open them now or never. Your choice." Dora opened hers immediately. Dara waited until the next morning. Neither spoke about it in detail, but that evening, Dora placed a folded page under Serena's pillow. It wasn't one of John's, it was hers. A drawing of Serena standing between 2 young trees. One labeled me, one labeled Dara, and under Serena's feet, roots. That night, Serena lit a candle again, wrote in her journal, entry, "I forgave him, not for him, not even for them, for me, so I could walk freely into what's next without dragging a shadow behind me." This was never about reunion. This was about release. Serena didn't think much of the envelope when it arrived. It was tucked between a flyer for swim classes and an overdue electric bill. Her name was written in clean silver print. The logo in the corner stopped her. Ardina Beauty. She blinked twice. Inside, a letter. Dear Miss Serena Woods, your recent courtroom strength and the quiet dignity you've displayed have drawn widespread attention. Ardena would be honored to invite you as the new face of our mother. Queen, flame, campaign, a brand built on resilience deserves a woman who embodies it. We await your answer. Warmly, the Ardena board. She placed the letter on the table and sat down. The girls were in their room, chattering about storybooks and glue sticks. Serena sat motionless for several minutes, the words echoing in her head. Face of a campaign? Her? The same woman who once cried on the bathroom floor, wondering if she had enough strength to raise 2 daughters on leftovers and library books? She stood, went to the back of her closet, and pulled out the box. The red dress still lived there, pressed, folded, untouched since the ruling. She held it up. It shimmered faintly in the afternoon sun. She hadn't worn it for beauty. She had worn it for power. But that day had been about survival. This was something else. Clara arrived later that evening, dropping off extra notebooks for the girls. Serena showed her the letter. Clara's eyebrows lifted. They saw you, really saw you. Serena gave a dry smile. I'm not a model. No, you're a message. I don't want to be turned into a symbol, she said, half whispering. They'll glamorize the story. Twist it. Clara leaned forward. Only if you let them write it for you. That night, Serena tucked the letter back into the envelope and left it untouched. She didn't want to be anyone's campaign. She just wanted to be their mother. No applause, no spotlight. The next day, Serena stood in the kitchen folding laundry while Dora rummaged through the hallway closet. Mommy, she called out, why's your red dress in a box? Serena didn't turn. Because I don't need it anymore. Dora walked in, dragging it behind her like a cape. You wore it when you made Daddy listen. Serena smiled softly. And then you put it away like it never happened, Dora added, frowning. Serena crouched down. That's because it wasn't about the dress. But you look like a superhero, Dora said. Dara appeared behind her. You look like mommy power. Serena's lips parted slightly. Dora added, if you wear it again, will you let us be in the picture? Serena froze. They weren't asking her to wear it for the world. They were asking her to wear it for them. To let them witness their mother being powerful, with them this time, not beside them. She called Clara the next morning. I'm going to say yes. Clara exhaled over the phone. Good, but only on my terms, and the girls are part of it. Serena dialed the number on the letter. A woman answered with bright enthusiasm. Yes, Serena said without hesitation. I accept. But I won't be posed in isolation. Excuse me? I'm not a figure to be studied. I'm a mother. My daughters are my crown. If I do this, they're in it too. The voice on the other end paused. Then, understood. The shoot was scheduled 2 weeks later. It was held in a minimalist loft with natural lighting, soft linen drapes, and a single gold armchair. Serena walked in wearing the red dress. But this time, she wasn't alone. Dora wore a deep rose silk dress. Dara wore white. The photographer barely needed to direct them. Serena sat in the center, her daughters at either side, not flanking her as accessories, but anchoring her as her reasons. The first photo released went viral within an hour. Serena Woods. Mother. Queen. Flame. Caption. Some women fight for themselves, others fight for the little girls watching. She did both. People reposted it with messages like, she didn't raise daughters, she raised mirrors with fire. Serena turned off her notifications. She didn't need the internet's applause. She had Dora's smile and Dara's quiet nod. That night, Dora whispered in the dark, can we be like you when we grow up? Serena pulled the blanket higher over them. No, she said. The girls blinked in confusion. I want you to be more. The morning before the shoot, Serena stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing blueberries while sunlight washed over the countertops. The house was quiet, too quiet. Dora was humming from her room, but Dara hadn't emerged yet. That wasn't unusual, but something felt off. Then she heard the soft sound of a box opening. Serena dried her hands and stepped into her bedroom. Dara stood beside the open closet, kneeling over the red dress box. She didn't flinch when Serena entered. She was too focused. The red fabric draped loosely across her small hands like she was handling a flag. Serena spoke softly. "Why are you up so early?" Dara looked up. "I wanted to see it again. Before you wear it tomorrow." Serena leaned on the doorframe. "You've seen it before." "I know," Dara said, "but this time it's different." "How?" "You're not wearing it to fight anymore. You're wearing it to shine." Serena folded her arms, her expression warm. "And you want to see what that looks like?" Dara shook her head. "I want to remember it." She stood up, brushing the hem gently. "Because if you can be powerful in this dress, then maybe one day, I can too." Serena knelt beside her. "You don't need a dress to be powerful." Dara looked her straight in the eyes. "But you needed it once." Serena blinked, and in that moment, her daughter wasn't just her child. She was the keeper of memory, of legacy, of truth spoken and unspoken. Serena reached into the box, lifted the dress, and laid it flat on the bed. She sat down beside Dara. "I wore it because I didn't know how to use my voice back then, so I used fabric, color, silence." Dara placed a hand on hers. "And now?" Serena smiled. "Now I speak." Later that afternoon, while the girls worked on crafts in the living room, Serena sat at the dining table and pulled out a sheet of linen paper. She wrote a letter, not for Ardena, not for the media, for her daughters. She didn't read it aloud. She didn't tell them it existed, but she folded it, sealed it, and tucked it into the hem of the red dress. One day, when they were older, they'd find it. That night, Serena stood in front of the mirror. The dress hung beside her, pressed and ready. She stared at her reflection, then turned off the light, because the power wasn't in the mirror. It was in the eyes that would watch her step into the light tomorrow and see a mother who didn't break when she was underestimated, but rose again and again until the world had to look up. At bedtime, Dara whispered from her pillow, "Will there be cameras?" "Yes." "Will people see us?" "They will." Dara bit her lip. "What if I don't look perfect?" Serena tucked the blanket under her arms. "You don't need to look perfect. You just need to stand." Dara nodded, then murmured, "You stood for us, so now we stand with you." The next morning, as the stylist laid out makeup and lighting crews adjusted angles, Serena didn't pace. She helped Dora adjust her sash. She brushed a speck off Dara's shoulder, and when it was her turn to sit in the chair, she declined full makeup. No contour, no smoke, just me. The director called for silence. Cameras ready. Serena stepped into the red dress. Dara and Dora flanked her sides. The lights rose, and the room, every assistant, every makeup artist, every intern, went quiet. Because some moments don't need direction. They just unfold. The first shot was not posed. Serena looked straight ahead. Dara held her mother's hand. Dora leaned into her side. A real mother, with real daughters. Not a marketing fantasy, but a generational force. After the shoot, the creative director approached Serena. "We've worked with celebrities, models, politicians, but you," she raised a hand. "No slogans." He blinked. She smiled. "Just truth." That evening, Dara picked up the red dress as Serena laid it gently back in the box. "Are you putting it away again?" Serena hesitated, then shook her head. "No." She folded it and placed it inside the closet, not hidden, not buried, just present, visible. The campaign launched on a quiet Tuesday morning. Serena hadn't told anyone when to expect it, not even Clara. She simply sent the girls off to school, brewed her tea, and sat by the window. By 8:13 a.m., her phone lit up. By 8:17, her name was trending. And by 9, she turned the phone face down and walked away. The lead image was striking. Not staged, not filtered. Serena sat center in the red dress, calm, regal, grounded. Dara stood at her right, eyes forward, hands strong. Dora, ever her own spirit, leaned against her mother's shoulder, smiling faintly. The caption? Mother, Queen, Flame. Underneath, she didn't ask for a crown. She carried fire instead. The photo traveled fast. Social media didn't see a product line. They saw a story. A woman who stood after being discarded. A mother who said no, not with anger, but with grace. A daughter who questioned her worth, and a mother who answered with legacy. In one of the thousands of reposts, someone wrote, "She didn't reclaim power. She never gave it up. She just remembered where she left it. Clara stopped by in the afternoon, eyes wide. "Serena, have you seen this?" "I've seen enough. You're everywhere. Talk shows, podcasts, news features. I didn't do this to be everywhere." Clara smiled. "No, but you're there anyway." Serena shrugged lightly. "Then I hope the right people are watching." By the time Dara and Dora returned from school, their classmates had already seen the photo. Dora twirled into the kitchen, proud as ever. "Someone in my class said we looked like magazine girls." "You looked like yourselves," Serena said, lifting her into a hug. Dara was quieter. She placed her bag down, walked over, and whispered, "Today, someone said my mom's famous." Serena raised an eyebrow. "And what did you say?" Dara looked her in the eye. "I said my mom's not famous. She's fierce." Later that evening, a delivery arrived, a framed version of the photo, mounted on canvas, with the caption engraved into the metal base. Serena hung it in the hallway, across from the girl's bedroom door. Not in the living room, not in the entryway, where her daughters would see it every morning before school and every night before bed. Because this wasn't about how the world saw them. It was about how they saw themselves. That night, Serena sat at the kitchen table alone, reviewing school permission slips and scribbling notes in her planner. Her phone buzzed again, an unfamiliar number. She let it ring out. Then it buzzed once more. This time, a message. "Unknown. I saw the photo. I was wrong. About everything. You didn't just survive. You became more than I ever imagined. Thank you for showing them how to stand tall. Jay." She stared at the screen, then deleted the message. Some acknowledgments were meant to remain quiet. Dora padded out from her room in socks, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy." "Yes, baby." "Can we do another picture one day?" Serena lifted her into her lap. "Why?" "So we can remember this day when we're old." Serena kissed her forehead. "We don't need a picture for that." But deep inside, she knew they would. Not to prove anything to the world, but because one day, when doubts crept into her daughters' hearts, they'd have a visual reminder of the day they stood in truth, lit from within, unshaken, not posed. It had been nearly 6 weeks since the Ardena campaign went live. Life didn't change overnight, but it had changed. People smiled more when Serena entered a room. Teachers now asked for her opinion on school programs. Strangers on sidewalks offered knowing nods, some hesitant words of admiration. Yet none of it settled her, not truly, because visibility wasn't the same as healing. She was proud, yes, grateful, but peace? That remained untouched. Clara noticed. They were in the kitchen one evening, folding laundry, the girls already asleep, cartoons echoing faintly from the next room. "You're restless," Clara said, not looking up. "I'm fine," Serena answered automatically. Clara raised an eyebrow. Serena exhaled. "I thought when the court ruled, when the photo came out, when the campaign launched, something would feel finished. And it doesn't?" "No." Clara folded a towel neatly. "Because closure doesn't come from what others see. It comes from what you choose to no longer carry." Serena fell quiet, then asked, "What if I'm not carrying pain anymore? Just distance?" Clara looked at her, soft but firm. "Then maybe it's time to stop measuring growth by how far you've walked away, and start measuring it by what you're willing to walk toward." The next day, Clara handed Serena an invitation, embossed in silver. Women Reclaiming Power Gala, planning reception, location, Marlowe Conservatory. Serena frowned. "I thought this wasn't until fall. They're hosting a planning event. Small crowd, quiet room. They want you there." Serena hesitated. "Not as the face," Clara added. "Just as the seed." 2 nights later, Serena stood in front of her mirror again. This time in a midnight blue dress, nothing flashy, nothing bold, just elegant, refined, whole. She arrived late, on purpose. She didn't want to be introduced or photographed. She wanted to observe, to feel, and maybe to breathe differently. The conservatory smelled of fresh eucalyptus and vanilla. Candlelight flickered along the edges of the room. A jazz trio played in the corner. No cameras, no press, just voices, women, soft laughter, and then a man in a black tux standing near the window. He didn't turn immediately, but when he did, his eyes widened with slow recognition. Serena didn't freeze. She didn't falter. She walked over. He stepped back instinctively, giving her space. "Hello," he said, with warmth, not assumption. "Hello, Mr. Howell," she replied. He gestured toward a quiet corner. "Would you care to sit?" She did. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The music swelled. Then Howell broke the silence. "I saw the campaign." Serena nodded. "You didn't just raise daughters," he said. "You raised definition." She smiled faintly. "Thank you. I didn't reach out. Not because I wasn't thinking of you." She glanced sideways. He continued, "But because I didn't want to appear when you were shining, as if I belonged in that glow. You waited." "I did." Serena looked down at her glass. "And now? I'm here because you're not shining for others anymore. You're steadying for yourself. And I wanted to stand nearby, if allowed." Serena turned fully to him. "Not ahead of me, not behind me." He nodded. "Beside you." Or not at all. They talked until the candles dimmed. Not about pain, not about the past, about art, music, his mother's garden. He didn't ask for history. He just listened to her present. And when the evening ended, he didn't ask to walk her out. He simply stood and said, "When you're ready to sit again, I'll still be here." Then he bowed slightly and walked away. As Serena stepped into her waiting car, she looked out the window. Not at the lights, not at the faces, but at her reflection. No armor, no applause, just her, for the first time in a long time, undivided. 2 days later, Serena returned to the Marlowe Conservatory. Not for a reception, not for a meeting, just to stand. The room had been cleared. No candles, no music, just the tall, arched windows letting in morning light and the polished floor catching her reflection as she walked toward the center. She wasn't wearing a gown, no makeup, no stylist, just soft denim and a navy blouse, sleeves rolled at the elbows. She'd once stood in this same place years ago. Back then, she was John's silent partner, his +1, his backdrop. Now she was no one's shadow, just herself. She walked the perimeter slowly, letting her fingers brush against the velvet chairs still stacked from the night before. Each step felt like a word never spoken. Each pause felt like a breath she used to hold. At the far end, she found the old archway where she had once waited while John gave interviews. The memory came back like a breeze, not painful, just detailed. How she had once fidgeted with her bracelet, trying not to look invisible. How she'd once asked herself if quiet meant weak. She stood in that same spot now, still and rooted, and smiled. From behind, a soft voice interrupted. "I thought you might come back." It was Mr. Howell. He stood by the side entrance, no suit this time. Just slacks, a linen shirt, sleeves pushed back the same way hers were. He didn't approach. He waited. Serena turned to face him. "You always appear quietly. I never want to steal your moment." She chuckled under her breath. "There's no moment to steal today. Exactly why it matters." They walked slowly toward the center of the room. Not in sync, but in step. Not leading, not following. Equal. "How long have you known this place?" she asked. "I helped restore it with my father when I was 24, he said. "We sanded every column. I stained those railings myself." Serena raised an eyebrow. "I thought you were a finance guy." "I am. But legacy doesn't start with numbers. It starts with what you're willing to build without applause." She nodded quietly. He looked around. "You don't owe this room anything." "I know, but it owes you a salute." She smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just needed to see that I could return without shrinking." They stood in silence for several moments. Then Howell spoke again. "When I first saw you with your daughters in that photo," he trailed off, choosing his words carefully, "I didn't see a woman who had conquered pain. I saw a woman who chose to outgrow it." Serena looked at him. "Is that how you see me now?" "No," he said gently. "Now I see you as someone choosing peace, even when no one's watching." They sat on the edge of the small stage, shoes off, feet dangling. A breeze moved through the room as the tall windows opened slightly. Serena closed her eyes and leaned back on her hands. "I used to think closure came with declarations," she said softly. "A letter, a fight, a door slam. And now?" She turned toward him. "Now I think closure is walking into the same place and not flinching." He didn't reach for her hand. didn't fill the silence with compliments. He just sat beside her, reverent, and when the clock chimed noon he stood. "I'll walk you to your car." She didn't answer. Instead she stood, brushed imaginary dust off her jeans, and looked one last time at the hall, not to remember who she used to be, but to honor the version of her that walked in alone and walked out whole. Outside, the sun was soft. Mr. Howell opened the passenger door, but before Serena stepped in, she turned. "Why did you really wait?" He met her eyes. "Because I didn't want to write myself into your story. I wanted to be invited into it. If you ever chose to write a new chapter." She tilted her head, studying him. "And what makes you think I'm ready for one?" He smiled. "I don't." Pause. "But I know you're no longer closing the book." She got into the car. He shut the door. And didn't linger. She watched him walk away, not vanishing, not pursuing, just present, exactly as he promised. The following weekend, Serena found herself walking through the botanical gardens alone. She hadn't planned it. She'd simply told Clara she needed air, dropped the girls off at a friend's birthday party, and driven with no destination, until memory brought her here. The gardens hadn't changed. Still quiet, still curated with care, still blooming without permission. She wandered along the gravel path, hands in the pockets of her cream linen coat. Tall oaks stood to her left, violet tulips just starting to open to her right. The same path she'd once walked with John, years ago, back when she thought companionship meant lowering her voice to be heard. Today, her silence wasn't surrender, it was sovereignty. At the center of the garden, near the stone pond, a familiar figure stood. Mr. Howell, not watching, not waiting, just there, as if the universe had quietly threaded them into the same chapter again. He turned at the sound of footsteps. Recognition softened his features. Serena stopped a few paces away. "I didn't expect you," she said. "Neither did I," he replied. They shared a small laugh, light, easy. Serena looked around. "Still your favorite place?" "No," he said, eyes on her now. "But it just became mine again." They walked slowly without a plan, pausing when the path narrowed, resuming when the breeze urged them forward. No tension, no expectations, just shared steps. Serena glanced sideways. "Why haven't you asked me to dinner?" Howell didn't blink. "Because what you've just rebuilt inside you is still settling, and you don't want to interrupt that?" "I don't want to rush it, or take credit for something sacred." Serena paused mid-step. He stopped too. She studied him, really studied him. "I don't need rescuing." "I know," he said gently. "I only want to walk beside the woman who did her own saving." They reached a stone bench tucked beneath a blooming cherry tree. He gestured. She sat. He joined her, close, but not too close. A long silence settled, the kind that doesn't feel empty, just unrushed. Then he turned toward her. "Serena." She looked at him. No guardedness, no mask, just presence. He didn't speak again. Instead, he gently reached for her hand resting on her lap. She allowed it. No flinch, no defense, just breath. He lifted her hand slowly and kissed the back of it. Once, no pressure, no promise, just honor. He released it and said nothing. Serena didn't pull away. She didn't lean forward either. She simply looked at him and nodded once. Not yes, not yet. But keep standing there. The wind moved the cherry blossoms overhead, a soft cascade drifting between them. "Have you ever waited for something without needing to own it?" she asked. He smiled. "Yes. I'm doing it now." As the sun dipped behind the hedges, Serena stood. He stood with her. She held his gaze. "I don't know what this is yet. Neither do I. But I like the way it feels. So do I." She stepped closer, only slightly, just enough to let him know. She saw him. They exited the garden side by side. No fingers intertwined. No dramatic goodbye. Just an unspoken agreement, whatever came next, would walk, not run. Would be built, not borrowed. Would be real. That night, Serena wrote again in her journal. Entry. "I didn't fall today. I didn't fly either. I stood. And someone stood beside me. Not to carry me, not to follow, not to lead, just to witness. And it was enough." The invitation came by courier, Thick ivory cardstock, pressed with gold foil. Women Reclaiming Power Gala hosted by Serena Woods. Serena stared at it for a long time before touching it. She hadn't signed up to host anything, but the board didn't ask her to be a guest of honor. They asked her to lead, and something in her chest said it was time. That night she stood in her bedroom, surrounded by sketches, fabric swatches, and event notes. Clara sat cross-legged on the bed, flipping through color palettes. "No red this time," Serena said. Clara smirked. "Two on the nose? Two backwards. This isn't a fight, it's a presentation." Clara held up a gold fabric sample. Muted, matte, regal. Serena touched it. "This," she whispered. "Gold for growth." The next few weeks moved with quiet purpose. Venue walkthroughs, menu tastings, photo permissions for invited guests. Nothing extravagant, everything intentional. Serena refused to make the evening about her. This wasn't about arrival. This was about transition. From silence to strength. From witness to architect. One morning, Dara walked into the dining room with a notebook clutched to her chest. "Mommy, I want to give a speech at the gala." Serena looked up. "Really?" Dora appeared behind her, already nodding. "She wants to do it with me." Serena blinked. "What kind of speech?" Dara opened the notebook. The first page read, "Our mom is a queen." They practiced in the living room. Dora stumbled over her lines. Dara corrected her gently. Serena watched from the kitchen, hand over her mouth, blinking back warmth she couldn't explain. Not because they called her a queen, but because they used their own voices, without fear. The night before the gala, Serena stood in her closet, staring at the finished gown. Gold silk, straight neckline, no embellishments, just clean lines and intention. The dress didn't shimmer loudly, it glowed, softly, like a woman who no longer needed to prove anything, just be. As she zipped the garment bag, Clara peeked in. Nervous? Oddly, no. Excited? Serena smiled. Ready. Later that night, Serena sat on the floor of her bedroom with her daughters, folding programs and tying tiny gold ribbons around each one. Dora yawned. Dara rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "Do you remember when you told me we weren't mistakes?" Dara whispered. Serena paused. "I do." "Well," Dara said, holding up a program, "tomorrow we tell them." Serena kissed the top of her head. "Then let's say it loud." At midnight, after the girls fell asleep, Serena stood in the hallway alone. She looked at the framed photo, her and the girls in red. Then she looked at her reflection in the hall mirror. The woman in gold was ready. Not to fight, not to rebuild, but to host, to welcome others into the very strength she had carved out of silence. The night arrived without fanfare. Serena walked into the venue through the back entrance, not to avoid cameras, but because she wasn't there to be photographed. She was there to create a moment. The Marlowe Conservatory had been transformed. White peonies lined the entryway. Soft gold lights warmed the ceiling. No red carpet, no velvet ropes, just intention, everywhere. At the center of the hall stood a small stage with a single acrylic podium. Clean, unassuming, and behind it, 50 rows of chairs, each one filled with women who had carried something heavy and still managed to stand tall. Serena wore her gold gown without jewelry, no earrings, no necklace. Her hair was pulled back into a soft bun. She didn't need to sparkle. She needed to anchor. And she did, with every step. Dara and Dora arrived an hour after the doors opened, hand in hand with Clara. They wore matching dresses, white chiffon with gold sashes. They didn't run to their mother. They walked, steady, proud. When they reached her, Dora whispered, "Do we look like little queens?" Serena knelt down. "No," she said gently. "You look like yourselves. That's better." At 8:12 p.m., the lights dimmed. The room hushed. A soft instrumental began to play. No lyrics, just a gentle piano. Serena stepped onto the stage. She didn't grab the microphone immediately. She stood for a moment and breathed. Then, "Welcome," she said, voice calm but resonant. "Tonight is not about one story. It's about the strength we build from all of them." She didn't go on for long, just enough to open the space. Then she stepped back and nodded toward the side of the stage. Dara and Dora walked out together. The applause started slow, then grew, not loud but respectful. The girls stood on stacked risers so the microphone met them at eye level. Dara opened the notebook. She looked at her sister, who gave a tiny nod. Then she began. "Our mom is a queen," Dara read, "but not because she wears crowns. She's a queen because she made room for us," Dora added. When people told her to stay quiet, Dara continued. She spoke with actions instead of noise. When people tried to shrink her, Dora said, she grew wider roots. They glanced at each other, then spoke together. And when we asked her if we were mistakes, they paused. Dora swallowed. Dara reached for her hand. Together again they said, "She told us we were miracles." The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. There was only one collective inhale, an emotional stillness. And then, slowly, the women in the audience stood, one by one, not because someone asked, but because they felt it rise within them. A standing ovation not for Polish, but for truth. Serena watched from the wings, hands at her sides, chin lifted. She didn't cry. She didn't smile widely. She just stood there, wearing gold, not like a costume, but like memory woven into fabric. Her daughters walked back toward her. Serena knelt down. Dara whispered, "Did we do okay?" "You didn't perform," Serena replied. "You revealed. That's more than okay." A few feet away, Howell watched the entire exchange. He didn't approach, didn't insert himself, just placed a hand over his heart and nodded when Serena looked his way. She returned the gesture, then turned back to her girls. The rest of the evening unfolded with soft music, gentle laughter, and quiet conversations. Women spoke in corners about survival and starting over. Others shared stories that had never left their throats until tonight. The space had done its work, and so had Serena. When the hall finally emptied and the cleanup team began stacking chairs, Serena remained seated on the stage steps with her daughters tucked against her sides. "Do you remember what you said?" Dora asked. Serena turned to her. "Which part?" "When you told us we weren't mistakes." "I remember." Dora smiled. "Good. Because we're going to tell our kids that too one day." Serena held them tighter. "You'd better. Family, I need to ask you something. Have you ever had to stay strong so someone younger could learn how to? Comment for my child if you've ever held your pain so your children could breathe easier. And please don't forget to subscribe." He hadn't planned to come. John stood outside the conservatory gates for 27 minutes before stepping inside. No invitation, no +1. Just a man in a navy suit that suddenly felt too formal for a night he wasn't meant to be part of. He kept to the shadows. Guests had already taken their seats. The music had started. The lights had dimmed. And still, he remained near the back, just close enough to see her. Serena, standing beneath the soft golden glow, not as someone being celebrated, but as someone who had turned resilience into architecture. She wasn't smiling for cameras. She wasn't scanning for approval. She was present, unbothered by who might be watching, including him. John leaned against the far wall, his hand loosely gripping the back of a chair that no one sat in. He didn't come to speak. He came to see, to finally observe the full picture he had once dismissed as incomplete. When Dara and Dora took the stage, he stiffened. They looked taller than he remembered, not in inches, but in posture, in confidence. And when they spoke, when they said the words he knew were rooted in the harm he once caused, he didn't shrink. He absorbed, quietly, with the weight of consequence pressing into his chest. He didn't cry. Tears would have been too easy. Instead, his throat stayed tight. And for the first time in months, he didn't think about how to fix anything. He thought about how to carry it, and how to let them walk forward without trying to follow. As the audience stood to honor Serena's daughters, John remained still. Not because he disagreed, but because standing would have felt like theft. He wasn't part of that moment. He was a lesson that created it. After the event, as people mingled, John slipped toward the far end of the hall, near the exit. He caught one last glance of Serena. She was laughing softly with two older women and signing something on a program. Howell stood a respectful distance behind her. John didn't feel anger or jealousy. He felt small, but not in shame. In understanding. He didn't move forward. He didn't wave. He just waited until Serena turned slightly and caught him in her periphery. Their eyes met. A single beat. She didn't walk toward him. She didn't look away. She gave a small nod. Nothing more. A nod that said, "I see you, but we are not the same story anymore." And then she turned back to her daughters, held one in each hand, and walked out of the gala, gold trailing behind her like a soft closing door. John remained where he was, long after the lights dimmed, long after the music stopped, until the only sound left was a janitor sweeping confetti off marble. He whispered to himself. She rose. The gold dress was no longer hanging on display. Serena folded it neatly, pressed it once more, and placed it into a garment bag. She didn't bury it. She simply returned it to its rightful place, among the things she didn't need every day but would never discard. That was how healing worked now, not performative, practical. Life resumed, but not as it had been before. She still packed school lunches, still stood in line at the post office, still overwatered her plants. But now her daughters walked taller. Now the barista knew her by name, Miss Woods, not Mrs. Now, when Dora drew family portraits, her mother stood in the center. And John? He had kept his promise. No pressure, just presence. Once a week, he sent a card. Sometimes it had a joke, sometimes a prayer, sometimes just a simple sentence. "I'm still learning." He never asked for time. He didn't request visits. He let his daughters choose. And for now they read the cards at the dinner table, aloud or in silence. It was enough. Serena took on a new rhythm. One Saturday she hosted a brunch for 6 women from the gala planning board. No press, no speeches, just scones, orange juice, and 6 women who had once felt voiceless. They didn't talk about Serena's story. They talked about tuition, rent, aging parents, and once, in a lull between coffee refills and laughter, one of them said, "I'm finally building a life I don't want to run from." Serena didn't reply. She just reached across the table and held her hand for a moment. Her home changed too. The hallway where the campaign photo once hung now featured a new frame, Dora's drawing, of the 3 of them, this time with tiny crowns not on their heads, but in their hands. Underneath, in Dora's handwriting, "Power is what you carry, not what you wear." Dara joined the school's storytelling club. She started writing short poems and taping them to the fridge. Some were about pancakes. Others were about growing up. One simply read, "My mom once cried quietly. Now she builds loudly." Serena left it there for weeks, until Dara quietly replaced it with a new one. Today she laughed while folding socks. "I think that means she's better." The day Howell called was the day Serena didn't flinch when she saw his name. She answered mid-laundry, wearing mismatched socks and a faded t-shirt. "Is this a bad time?" he asked. "No, it's real. I like real." He paused. "There's a new exhibit at the museum. Abstracts, soft edges, bold centers. Thought of you?" She smiled. "Soft edges and bold centers. That sounds about right. Would you come with me?" There was a pause. Not from hesitation, but from permission. She gave it to herself. That night she walked onto her balcony with a warm mug and an old blanket. The sky above her wasn't dramatic, just clear. No storm, no spotlight, just quiet. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like an intermission. It felt like a chapter, one she chose, one she didn't need to narrate aloud. The email subject line read, "Interview request, Woman of the Year." Serena read it twice, then closed the laptop without responding. She wasn't avoiding it. She was evaluating. Her life had already been printed and shared, dissected and retweeted. She had nothing to prove, but maybe, just maybe, she had something left to offer. Truth, on her own terms. 2 days later, she replied, "Yes." But no makeup chair, no scripted answers, and no edits, the journalist agreed. They met at a small cafe Serena had loved long before her name ever appeared in headlines. No assistants, no camera crew, just 2 cups of mint tea between them. The woman across from her pressed record. "First, thank you. Your story." Serena held up a hand. "I don't tell stories, I live them. If this is about retelling what's already public, we're wasting tea." The journalist nodded, startled, but intrigued. "Then, what do you want to say?" Serena leaned back in her chair. "That healing isn't linear, and it's not loud. Some days it looks like making your bed. Other days, it looks like saying no to someone you once loved." The woman scribbled notes, pausing only to ask, Do you consider yourself powerful? Serena exhaled. I consider myself present. Power fades. Presence roots. What would you say to other women still in the middle of it? Serena stirred her tea slowly. That peace doesn't arrive in a package. You build it. And you build it while tired. A silence stretched between them. Then came the question Serena knew would come. And forgiveness, do you think it's always necessary? Serena didn't flinch. No, but sometimes it's the only way to stop dragging the weight. You forgave your ex-husband. I released him. Isn't that the same? No, Serena said. One is a hand offered. The other is a chain set down. The recorder clicked off. The journalist smiled. I don't know how to headline this. You don't need to, Serena replied, rising to her feet. Let it live quietly. That's where the truth settles. The interview went live the following Sunday. It didn't go viral. It didn't trend. But the women who read it, really read it, sent letters. One wrote, "Thank you for showing me I don't have to announce survival for it to be real." Another, "You didn't give us steps. You gave us permission." Serena didn't frame the article. She folded it once and placed it in the same drawer that held the first letter John had written to the girls. Not to memorialize, just to keep. A week later, while making tea, Dara asked, "Why didn't you tell us you did an interview?" Serena glanced at her. "Because I didn't do it for attention." Was it about the court stuff again? No, Serena said. It was about the space after... The space after what? After pain. Dara tilted her head. And what's in that space? Serena smiled. Freedom, laundry, laughter, grocery lists, maybe love. Dora called from the other room. Did you say love? Serena laughed. Maybe. That night, Serena returned to her journal. I don't want my voice to echo anymore. I want it to land, softly, like truth on skin. I'm not afraid to be quiet. I'm afraid of forgetting how precious quiet can be. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting long, gentle lines across the hardwood floor of Serena's living room. She'd just finished tidying the bookshelf when the doorbell rang. Not many people rang unannounced anymore. She opened the door slowly. It was Howell. In one hand, a slim, wrapped package. In the other, nothing. No flowers, no performance, just presence. Is this a good time? He asked. Serena stepped aside. It's always a good time for quiet company. They sat in the living room, shoes off, legs folded under them like old friends. No formal greetings, just comfort. He placed the package on the coffee table. I saw this and thought of you, he said. It's not flashy, but it felt right. Serena didn't rush to unwrap it. She just looked at him. You always bring things slowly. I think slow things last longer. She nodded once, then removed the brown paper, layer by layer. Inside, a wooden frame. Simple, clean. Within it, a photo. Not the Ardenna campaign. Not the courtroom. Not the gala. It was a candid shot. Someone had taken it during the brunch she hosted weeks ago. Serena was mid-laugh, leaning slightly over the table, one hand touching Clara's arm. No makeup. No gown, no attention, just joy, real, ordinary joy. Beneath it, engraved in small gold letters, the woman who built quiet into strength. Serena stared at it, then touched the frame lightly. How did you get this? One of the women at your brunch had a camera. I asked her for a copy. Serena set the frame down and leaned back. It's strange seeing myself like that. Why? Because I look finished. You look rooted. She didn't speak. He continued, I didn't bring it to make a statement. Then why? To remind you who you are when no one's asking you to be anything. A long moment passed. Then Serena spoke, voice low. I spent so long preparing for the next blow, the next betrayal, the next headline. I forgot how to just exist. You've remembered. I'm still learning. He smiled. So am I. She stood and placed the photo on the mantel. Centered. Not among the awards or the letters or the press clippings. Above the girl's artwork, just beside a houseplant she always forgot to water. There it would stay, not as a shrine, as a mirror, for the days when her reflection needed reminding. When she turned back around, Howell had risen too. I should go, he said. No, she replied gently. You should stay, for tea. He didn't smile too wide, didn't lean in, just nodded. As long as you don't mind slow. She moved toward the kitchen. Slow is the only thing that feels honest now. They didn't talk about love. They didn't need to. But something unspoken settled between them, unrushed, unforced. Not a promise, but a presence. Not fireworks, just warmth. That night, after Howell left, Serena climbed into bed beside Dora, who had fallen asleep reading a fairy tale with the book open on her chest. Serena closed it softly and kissed her forehead. Dora mumbled, "Was he here again?" Serena whispered, "Yes." "Do you like him?" Serena smiled into the darkness. "I like how I feel when I don't have to explain myself." Dora's voice came again, half asleep. "Then that's the one you keep." The headlines came suddenly. Not scandalous, not flashy, just inevitable. Rousey Woods removed as chairwoman of Vantel Group. Board issues statement on conduct and breach of protocol. Insider trading investigation launched. Serena didn't click the links. She didn't need to. Everything she'd predicted had unfolded. But not by her hand. By Rousey's own. The news reached her through a whispered phone call from Clara. "She's out. And it's messy." Serena didn't flinch. "Let the dust do its work," she said calmly. "We don't need to sweep anything." "You really aren't going to speak out?" "For what?" "Closure. Justice. I already have peace." That afternoon, Serena visited her old meditation center for the first time in months. She sat on the same woven mat, same candlelight, same silence, different spirit. A woman approached her after the session. "I saw what they wrote about your sister-in-law," she said. "It's wild." Serena smiled faintly. "I hope she finds stillness, even after everything she did, especially after—" The woman nodded slowly. "That kind of grace. It's rare." "It's not grace," Serena said. "It's freedom. Grace implies she earned something. This isn't about her." Meanwhile, Rousey's face began disappearing from brand campaigns. The speeches stopped. The gala invites dried up. Her voice no longer echoed in boardrooms. In its place, silence. The same silence Serena had once been sentenced to. Now, Rousey sat in it, unacknowledged. An anonymous source later confirmed what everyone already guessed. Rousey had forged internal projections, hidden partnership liabilities, and manipulated image optics for stock gain. It hadn't been for power. It had been for revenge, and she'd gotten neither. Because Serena had never played the game. And so, Rousey had nothing to win from. Weeks passed. No direct apology. No confrontation. Until a letter arrived. Handwritten. No name on the envelope. Just an address Serena hadn't given out in years. Inside, "I thought I could hurt you into silence. But you didn't fight me. You watched me ruin myself. I wanted your crown, Serena. I thought it came with applause. But now I understand. It came with discipline. You never shouted. You never defended. You endured. That's the loudest truth there is. No signature. Just an initial R." Serena read it once. Folded it. Placed it in the same drawer as the photo Howell had gifted her. Not as a trophy. As a closing page. Later that night, Dara found her in the kitchen, sipping herbal tea. Was that from her? Yes. "Are you going to reply?" "No." "Why not?" "Because I already did." Dara furrowed her brow. "When?" "Every day I didn't stoop." The following morning, Serena took the girls to the sea. Just the three of them. They stood barefoot at the edge of the water. Dora ran ahead, chasing seagulls. Dara clutched her hand. "Does it feel good?" "What?" "Knowing she lost." Serena looked at the horizon. "No. It feels good knowing I didn't." John sat alone in the corner of a quiet co-working space in Dubai, the kind where no one asked questions, just rented silence. His laptop screen glowed with a document titled "Telling My Truth" by John Woods. He'd rewritten the introduction 9 times, and still, the words didn't sound right. He wasn't sure if it was guilt or fear, or just the absence of an audience. The idea had come to him in the weeks after Serena's rise and Rousey's collapse. A publisher in Europe had reached out. "We want your side of the story," they said. Not Serena's strength, not Rousey's fall, just John, a man caught between 2 powerful women. He believed people would want to read that. They didn't. The memoir, once launched, received exactly 11 pre-orders. 7 of them came from bots, 1 from his personal assistant, the rest, refunds. Reviews never arrived, not even bad ones. Silence, it seemed, had grown stronger than scandal. John tried a few interviews, pitching himself as a man reclaiming his voice. Every journalist wanted to ask about Serena. What does she think about the book? Did she read your draft? Why didn't she respond publicly to anything? John's answers were always carefully rehearsed. She's chosen a path of silence. I respect that. She's not obligated to validate my reflections. This isn't about blame. It's about healing. But no one believed him. And worse, no one cared. Eventually, the publishing house shelved the title. No promo, no paperback, just an ebook link that quietly expired in 3 months. Even Rousey hadn't bothered to mention it. And Serena? She hadn't acknowledged it once. Desperate to salvage something, John pivoted. He began offering lectures, not TED Talks, not best-selling seminars. Small, rented rooms, plastic chairs, bottled water, flyers that read, "Falling Forward, an honest discussion on personal accountability." Sometimes 5 people came, sometimes 2, once just 1. But he never stopped showing up, not because he loved the spotlight, but because he had nothing left to hide behind. At one lecture, he stood before a half-filled room in a hotel conference basement. He spoke about ego, about choices, about how silence from the one you wronged can echo louder than public rage. A young man raised his hand. If you could say one thing to Serena now, what would it be? John paused, then said simply, "Thank you for not dragging me. You could have." "You didn't." The room was still. Then the young man asked, "Do you think she forgives you?" "I think," John replied, "she's too free to hate me." That night he returned home to an inbox with no new invites. No book deals, no applause, just a single message from one of the attendees. "Your lecture made me call my mother." "Thank you." John leaned back, smiled faintly. It wasn't Serena's voice. It wasn't the world's. But it was something, a new kind of beginning. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of Serena's study, a copy of the ebook remained unread, still wrapped in digital plastic, not out of cruelty, but because her story had never needed a rebuttal. It had written itself. The house was quiet again. Golden light spilled through gauzy curtains as dusk settled over Dubai. Serena stood in the doorway of the girls' room, watching Dara line up storybooks, alphabet blocks and paper crowns like soldiers in a royal court. Dora was already curled under the sheets, thumb tucked under chin, eyes fluttering. But Dara always had one more question. Always something left unsaid. Serena sat on the edge of her daughter's bed, brushing a curl off her forehead. "Mama," Dara whispered. "Yes, baby." Dara's eyes searched hers, not for answers, but for confirmation of what she already sensed. "We're not mistakes, right?" Serena blinked. Not fast enough, not before a single tear touched her cheek. She gathered herself, slid under the blanket beside Dara, pulling her daughter's small hand into hers. "Where did you hear that?" Serena asked softly. Dara hesitated. "At the school picnic. A boy said his mommy told him we came from a scandal." Serena exhaled slowly, and then she smiled. Not out of pain, out of power. She turned to face her daughter fully. "Dara, listen to me. You are not a mistake." Dara nodded, but didn't speak. Serena went on. "You're not just a miracle either." The little girl furrowed her brow. "Then what am I?" Serena's voice dropped into a whisper, firm as it was tender. "You're a storm that turned into a queen." Dara blinked. "A storm?" "Yes, fierce, unpredictable, unapologetic. You came when no one expected you, changed everything around you. And a queen?" Serena tucked a curl behind Dara's ear. "Because you don't have to earn the right to exist. You already wear it." For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Dara snuggled closer and asked, "Does that mean Dora's a queen too?" Serena laughed gently. "She's probably a general." A giggle escaped Dara's throat. Later that night, Serena wrote something in her journal. "My daughters will never question whether they were born from love. They will only ask what to do with all the power it gave them." The next morning, when the girls bounced into the kitchen, Serena was already dressed, poised, calm, glowing. "What's on the schedule today?" Dora asked, between mouthfuls of toast. Nothing urgent, Serena replied. But we have a meeting at the boutique. Again? Dara pouted. Serena knelt and met their eyes. Because today you'll pick your new middle names. Dora gasped. Like royalty? Serena nodded. Exactly like that. They arrived at the boutique not for clothes, but for a ceremony. Small, private. No cameras, no headlines, just a mother, 2 daughters, and the decision to carry new meanings forward. Dara chose Amina, truthful and trustworthy. Dora chose Zariah, blossoming and brilliant. Serena didn't cry. She smiled, because echoes no longer haunted their name. They carried it now, crowned by clarity. Adolescence came like a dawn, slow, golden, and utterly transformative. The twins no longer wore matching bows or skipped to the same rhythm. Their steps diverged. Their passions pulsed in separate directions. And Serena, with a heart equal parts pride and ache, watched it all unfold with grace. Dora discovered dance first, not ballet or pageant poise. Her movement was uncontained, untamed. At a community arts center tucked between marble towers, she watched a woman twirl barefoot to the echo of ancient drums. Dora's breath caught. Her feet moved before her mind did. From that night, the floor became her language. Dara, quieter but no less fierce, found her spark in the stories people tried to hide. She joined the school's civic club, not to collect medals, but to ask questions teachers avoided. She spent lunch hours reading articles on laws, weekends drafting petitions. Her voice, once small and sugar-soft, began to slice clean through silence. She didn't want fame. She wanted justice. At 13, they were no longer the twins. They were fire in 2 forms, movement and voice, heat and clarity. One evening, Serena sat between them as they argued over who would speak at a youth conference. Dora wanted to perform a dance piece. Dara had written a speech on freedom of expression. You should go, Dora finally said with a shrug, but her eyes held disappointment. You should too, Dara replied, but maybe not for the same crowd. Serena leaned in. Girls, listen. Both turned. You don't have to shrink to fit the same frame. You were never meant to be duplicates. Dora frowned. But we used to be everything together. You still are, Serena said, just not the same page. You're different paragraphs in the same story. That weekend, Dara stood on stage with nothing but a mic and her truth. No one gets to define you by the headlines that made your parents famous, she told the crowd. You choose your legacy. The room erupted. Some stood, some cried, and backstage, Dora watched with a quiet, knowing smile. The next day, Dora danced barefoot in a studio flooded with light. Each motion was a memory released, each spin a refusal to be boxed in. Serena sat silently in the corner, hands clasped, eyes wet. She didn't interrupt. She didn't direct. She just bore witness to 2 fires finding their shape. In the quiet afterward, she whispered to herself, they didn't just survive the past, they're turning it into fuel. It took them over a decade. 10 years of exchanged glances across school parking lots, CEO parenting meetings, and gallery visits with the girls. But tonight, they weren't mother and mentor. They weren't the village-raising twins. They were simply Serena and Howell, 2 grown people in their best clothes, walking side by side into a quiet Dubai restaurant built into a rooftop garden. Are you nervous? Serena asked, half smiling as the host led them toward a table surrounded by candlelight and desert orchids. Howell paused, adjusted his cuffs, and replied, Only because you finally said yes. She laughed, soft, surprised. I didn't know I had you waiting. He met her eyes, steady. You didn't. But I waited anyway. Their table overlooked the skyline. Lights pulsed in the distance like silent music. Serena unfolded her napkin slowly, grounding herself. This feels strange. Familiar, Howell countered, but finally labeled correctly. They didn't rush through the meal. They took their time. He asked about her work, how her clinic had started treating migrant workers without charge. She asked about his mentorship project, how boys without fathers stayed past dark just to hear his voice. There was no flirtation, no tension, only presence, only warmth. At one point, she admitted, I was afraid it would feel forced. Does it? No, she said quietly. It feels overdue. The waiter brought tea instead of dessert. Serena held her cup like it was something sacred. Howell, Yes? If this doesn't go anywhere, promise me something. He set his cup down. Promise me we'll still be us. His brow lifted slightly. You mean the us that built a family without a blueprint? She nodded. He gave a slow, affirming smile. Then I promise. The bill arrived. Howell reached for it. Serena raised a brow. Old-fashioned? He smirked. No, just grateful. They walked out onto the rooftop garden. The evening breeze moved around them like memory. Neither said much. Then Serena turned toward him. Howell didn't step closer. He didn't ask for more than the moment. Instead, he said, "You look more free than you did 5 years ago. I feel more free than I ever have." And then, instead of leaning in for a kiss, Howell offered his arm. Serena looped hers through it. No grand declarations, no fireworks, just one long, quiet walk through the night. Behind them, the restaurant lights faded. Ahead of them, nothing was rushed. They weren't rushing toward love. They were walking toward it, with both feet planted. It began with a photograph. Serena standing on a small platform at a local school fundraiser, holding up 2 donated dresses, one in emerald silk, the other in soft denim. She wasn't posing. She was mid-sentence, her mouth open, her eyes alight. A volunteer mom captured the shot and posted it with a caption. She called us Mommy Flames. We are. By morning, the image had been shared over 40,000 times. It wasn't vanity that lit the fuse. It was validation. Because for years, Serena had repeated a simple phrase to every mother who walked into her clinic, her home, her office. You're not broken. You're a flame. When the world called them burdens, she called them light. When society dismissed them as statistics, she named them stories worth publishing. A group of women who'd been listening silently decided to act. They registered a nonprofit. The mission: provide fashion-forward, confidence-restoring clothing for single mothers re-entering the workforce. The name? Mommy Flame. At first, Serena tried to stay out of it. She didn't want her name attached to a movement she hadn't orchestrated. But when the founders insisted on crediting her origin phrase, she gave her blessing, with one condition. If a woman walks in feeling invisible, she must leave knowing she's priceless. That became the official motto. The first Flame Rack event was held at a community center in downtown Dubai. Volunteers created curated closets with style advisors who were all once recipients of the program themselves. No one was handed second-hand clothes in trash bags. Each mother got fitted, styled, photographed, if she wanted to be. And then she received a handwritten card. From one flame to another, keep burning. Dora offered to choreograph a performance for the launch. Dara offered to speak at the press release. Serena? She stayed backstage, organizing shoe sizes and steaming coats. But a reporter found her anyway. You're the founder, right? Serena shook her head. Just the spark. Over time, the movement grew beyond the city. Satellite programs emerged in Jordan, Kenya, the Philippines, and Brazil. Mommy Flame became more than fashion. It became scholarships, counseling, workshops on public speaking, parenting, grant writing. Not a pity parade, a pride procession. One winter evening, as Serena watched Dara pack for a youth summit in Cairo and Dora prep for a global dance competition in Lisbon, Howell stepped into her living room holding a small box. Another invite, he said. Unwomen, Geneva. They want you on stage. She raised a brow. They'll expect me to smile into cameras. He nodded. Serena looked at her daughters, then at the envelope. The fire they inherited wasn't just legacy. It was infrastructure, built on love, lined with resilience, wearing heels, red lipstick, and power. A full year had passed. 12 months since the first Reclaiming Power Gala. What had begun as a local charity fashion event now shimmered across Dubai's skyline as one of the most anticipated nights in the city's cultural calendar. But this time, Serena wasn't backstage. She was center stage, wearing gold. The ballroom glowed beneath glass chandeliers. Every seat was filled with ambassadors, entrepreneurs, mothers, survivors. Rows of chairs wrapped in silk, place cards bearing names once forgotten but now reclaimed. On each table stood a flame-shaped crystal centerpiece, engraved with the same inscription. Dignity doesn't need permission, only light. Serena stepped up to the mic. A hush fell across the room. She smiled, not nervously, not performatively, but like someone who had learned to wear her own name with pride. Last year, she began, I stood in this room helping steam gowns behind the curtain. Tonight I stand before you in one." She paused. "Not because I needed the attention, but because we all need the reminder. Our lives don't end with labels. They begin with voice, applause, then stillness. Tonight, you won't see models. You'll see mothers, daughters, fighters, survivors, architects of futures their past tried to steal." She stepped aside. "And to begin our show, my daughters, my miracles, my fire and grace." Dara stepped onto the runway first. No music played, only her voice over the speakers. "I speak for girls who were told that their stories made them dirty. My story makes me dangerous, in the best way." She walked with a quiet power, wearing a tailored cape stitched with words from her speeches. At the back, 3 embroidered lines. "I was not born small. I was only silenced." She didn't speak. She danced. Down the runway. No choreography. Just presence, precision, power. Her dress flowed like smoke behind her. And when she stopped at the end of the stage, she turned, raised a hand to the audience, and blew a kiss, not flirtatious, but defiant. A gesture to say, "We're not here because of mercy. We're here because of merit." Backstage, Serena wiped her cheeks. Howell handed her a tissue. She shook her head, half laughing. "This is ridiculous. I swore I wouldn't cry this year." "You did," Howell smiled. "But you also swore you'd never wear gold again." She looked down at her gown. "I guess I broke a few vows tonight." He offered his arm. "You started writing new ones instead." Later, when the curtain dropped and Serena returned to the mic for closing remarks, she didn't speak about fashion or motherhood or resilience. She said one thing. To her daughters. To herself. To every woman watching from the back of the room or the edge of her own life. What we wear tonight is not fabric. It's proof that we lit the match, walked through the fire, and made it art. He didn't call first, didn't text. Just appeared, standing outside the gallery 2 days after the gala, wearing the same navy coat he used to favor back when Serena believed in beginnings that started with apologies. She opened the door herself. Their eyes met. No anger, no tension, just the silence that only time could build. "I'm not here for trouble," he said softly. "I know," she replied. He stepped in. The gallery was closed, but the lights remained warm. Paintings lined the walls, some by local artists, some by the girls, one by Serena. John stopped in front of the last one. It was untitled. A woman wrapped in gold, standing in a sea of gray. Her face wasn't visible, but the posture was unmistakably hers. "I've seen photos from the gala," he said after a long pause. "They're everywhere." Serena nodded. "It was a moment. Not just a moment," he said. "A monument." They stood beside the painting in silence. John slipped his hands into his pockets. "I didn't come to ask for anything." Serena tilted her head slightly. "Then why now?" He looked down, then back up. "Because the girls are about to step into a world I never helped them prepare for. And I know I lost that chance, but I didn't want to disappear before saying something." She didn't fold her arms, didn't steal her voice. Instead, she said, "I'm glad you came, not for me, for them." He blinked. "You don't need to apologize again," she continued. "They've built their own foundations. What they need now isn't repair, it's respect." He nodded slowly. "I can do that." Serena walked toward a bench beneath one of the skylights. He followed. They sat. She let the silence breathe. Then she said, "There was a time I needed you to hurt, to see me win, to know you missed out. And now?" He asked. "I don't need that anymore." She looked straight at him. "Because I didn't just survive. I created." He exhaled through his nose. Soft, reflective. "I watched the clip of Dara's speech," he admitted. "She has your cadence. And your ability to disarm a room with 10 words," she replied. He gave a slight smile. "She used to ask about you," Serena continued. "Not to shame you, just to make sense of herself." He nodded again, slower this time. "I figured. I never lied to her." "I know." They sat a little longer. Then John stood. No dramatic farewells. No last-ditch confessions. Just one simple truth. They turned out extraordinary. "They did," Serena agreed. He hesitated at the door. "You'll tell them I came?" She smiled. "No," she said gently. "I'll let them decide if they want to know." He paused, accepting that. "Then," stepped outside. Serena didn't watch him walk away. She walked toward the painting again. The woman in gold looked braver than she remembered painting her. The sun dipped over the hills of Dubai, casting amber shadows across the gala's exit arch. The second Reclaiming Power gala had ended. Photographers packed up. Donors departed with gift bags. The staff whispered goodbyes. And in the center of it all stood Serena, not as an exhibit, but as the curator of her own legacy. Dara had slipped her hand into hers without a word. Dora stood on the other side, her high heels clutched in one hand, hair damp with sweat and champagne mist. Howell walked a respectful step behind. No urgency, no claim, just presence. They didn't speak as they left the venue. The city around them buzzed with Friday nightlife, fast cars, rooftop music, murmurs of wealth, but none of it followed them as they walked barefoot onto the sand behind the building. Serena had always said the desert reminded her of rebirth. Tonight, it felt like home. Dora broke the silence first. "Did you see how Mr. Halim cried after my solo?" Serena nodded. "You gave him a reason to—" Dara looked up. "I saw John." Serena didn't blink. "He came by the gallery. Did he say anything?" "Yes. What did you say?" Serena's voice didn't crack. "I told him I didn't need an apology anymore." They kept walking. The breeze pulled at Serena's gown, soft chiffon and golden rose. Her daughters wore gowns stitched by women funded through the non-profit they'd launched. They weren't just fashion statements. They were survival, rethreaded into beauty. Ahead, Howell stopped. He extended a hand toward Serena, not as a claim, but as a gesture. She took it. Her daughters followed. 4 shadows walked across the sand, long and steady. No storm in sight. No music played. No speech was needed. The story had already been written, on stages, in courtrooms, in hospital wings, and in tear-streaked lullabies. As they reached the quiet crest of the dune, Serena looked back only once, not to mourn, to witness. The path she had walked was behind her, but the path she had chosen, it started now. Some women rise from shame. Others rise for their daughters. Serena rose for both. My amazing family, thank you for staying with me until the very end. If today's story moved your heart, let me feel your love. Type "forever with you, Dr. Phillips" in the comments. Don't leave silently. Your voice gives this community life. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you never miss a moment of love and twilight.